Chapter 1635. Can you hand over the Garm series? The moment those words were spoken, the air in the room froze slightly. Like a swamp, even the wind became viscous. Charlotte and Loki were silent. They didn't want to say another word. That was because the two of them knew who Wu Yan was asking for. Flay blanked out for a bit. It took her quite some time to comprehend what happened. She looked at Wu Yan and then at Bronson. Her face carried a bit of panic, a bit of nervousness, and a bit of hope. Bronson looked at Wu Yan, who was looking at him in surprise. Soon after, he seemed to have understood something. He glanced at the panicked, nervous, and hopeful Flay, and a thoughtful expression appeared in his eyes. Looks like you're very fond of my daughter. For her, you're even willing to use yourself as a condition. How surprising, use myself as a condition. Wu Yan crossed his arms in front of his chest and he sighed. I think you've made a mistake somewhere. Mistake? Bronson couldn't help but look at Wu Yan. Sir, didn't you intend to join my divine works in exchange for the freedom of the Garm series of automaton? That's why I said you've made a mistake. With a calm expression, Wu Yan said something that shocked everyone present. I only want you to hand over the Garm series automaton. I don't have any intention of paying you anything. What do you mean? Bronson narrowed his eyes. You don't want to pay me anything? You want me to hand over the Garm series automaton to you? If Wu Yan really had such an idea, everyone who knew about it would definitely laugh out loud. He didn't want to pay anything and only wanted to obtain a group of automaton with decent performance that would not burden the puppeteer and could be controlled by a rookie puppeteer. What was the difference between this and not wanting to pay for a house? However, in the face of this question that would make everyone laugh, Wu Yan gave a calm answer. That's right. This time around, it was not only Charlotte, Flay and Rocky that were stunned. Even Bronson was stunned. He started to frown. He frowned and said in a displeased manner. What do you think, sir? If it was someone else, would they agree to such a request? You will agree to it. Wu Yan smiled confidently before he continued. This caused everyone who was still in shock to be greatly shocked. In any case, you didn't intend to let the Garm series of automaton continue to survive in the first place, did you? Charlotte and Loki were shocked. Flay's beautiful face changed drastically and she became dumbstruck. Bronson's gaze toward Wu Yan was no longer filled with emotions. There was only coldness and a hint of sharpness. Sir, what do you mean by this? Do you need me to make it clearer? Wu Yan acted as if he didn't care about this powerful enemy who had once seized the throne of the Demon King. He didn't even bother to be polite when he spoke. Comparing the performance of the automaton of the Garm series and the automaton of the Angel series at the night meeting, choosing the one with superior performance and selling it to the military? As if he was amused by his own words, Wu Yan chuckled and shook his head. You don't have such thoughts at all. You've decided from the very beginning that the automaton to be used as the main force of the British Army would be the Angel series, and that the Garm series of automaton would be discarded, right? What do you mean by this? Charlotte couldn't help but take a step forward and questioned Wu Yan. You're saying that he deceived Flay? Contrary to Charlotte, Flay took a step back and looked at Bronson. She shook her head repeatedly. It seemed like she hoped that her adoptive father would give a negative answer. However, Bronson didn't even look at Flay. His gaze remained fixed on Wu Yan. I've been expressing my goodwill all this time. Yet, you slandered me like this. Do you think that I, Bronson, am easy to bully? While speaking, a wave of magic power gradually emerged from Bronson's body. It spread out like a ripple. Although the wave of magic power was very obscure, it seemed to have added weight to the entire space. It created an abnormally heavy pressure. Charlotte and Loki felt their shoulders sink. Their hearts also sank. Flay, who was weak, felt even more exaggerated. It was as if she was hit by an invisible force. She was forced to take a few steps back. What a heavy magic power. Charlotte's expression was a little uncertain. If this Bronson were to participate in the night gathering now, apart from Wu Yan and Magnus, no one in the academy would be a match for him. Charlotte had such a feeling when she sensed Bronson's magic power. Even though Bronson was eliminated in the night gathering in his year and hasn't made any progress in the past 10 to 20 years, his strength still couldn't be underestimated. However, to use magic power to compete with Wu Yan? Wouldn't that be showing off before an expert? Didn't I tell you not to do it half-heartedly? That would make others look down on you. Even Charlotte and Loki felt that the wave of magic power was heavy. Wu Yan's expression remained unchanged. He turned his head and looked at Bronson. Actually, if you think about it for a bit, you'll understand. Even if you almost obtained the position of Demon King, you're still not a Demon King. The Magician Association has a rule that only Demon Kings have the right to come into contact with taboos. Apart from Demon Kings, anyone who comes into contact with taboos will be wanted. Wu Yan had a faint smile on his face. Sir Bronson, the automaton of the Garm series is a bandal, isn't it? No matter how dumb Charlotte, Flay, and Rocky are, they understood Wu Yan's intention when they heard him. The automaton of the Hellhound series is a forbidden doll. In other words, the materials used to create the automaton of the Hellhound series will definitely include a part of a living person's body. Using a human body is a taboo among taboos. If the fact that the automaton of the Hellhound series is a forbidden doll is exposed, then the creator of the automaton will definitely be arrested. In serious cases, they might even be sentenced to death. In other words, no matter how good the automaton of the Hellhound series is, it is impossible to sell them in large quantities, let alone to the military. If the Magician Association finds out, Bronson will definitely suffer. Under such circumstances, would Bronson really allow his workshop to mass-produce the Hellhound series? The answer is, of course, no. In fact, it is more likely that Bronson will abandon the Hellhound series to cover up his crimes. Charlotte was right. Bronson has been deceiving Flay from the very beginning. Father. Lord. Flay's pretty face started to turn pale. Lord Father, is deceiving me? Bronson did not answer. Instead, he coldly glanced at Flay. You were the one who exposed the fact that the automaton of the Hellhound series is a forbidden doll, right? I see. Bronson shook his head and sighed. I didn't expect that. Not only did you not do anything, you even went to another direction. Bronson raised his head and he looked at Wu Yan, who was standing in front of him. If you want the Hellhound series automaton, I can give it to you. Chapter 1636. In an instant, Frey's originally deathly pale face regained its rosy color. Her red eyes revealed a joyous expression. But, Wu Yan, who sensed the tension in the air, Rocky, who knew Bronson's character very well, and Charlotte, who had a bad premonition, did not feel happy because of this. That was because this matter was not as simple as it seemed. Sure enough, in the next second, Bronson spoke with a tone as if he was talking about business. Divine Works is willing to give you all of the Garm series of automatons. However, my condition is that you must give me one of your automaton in exchange. Boom. Right after Bronson said those words, a berserk magic whirlwind suddenly erupted. Like a typhoon, it exploded in all directions. The shockwaves surged through the entire area. The magic whirlwind whistled through the air. Everyone present felt as if their hearts had been struck by a heavy hammer. Before they could even react in shock, the magic whirlwind that had transformed into a magic whirlwind assaulted their bodies. Immediately, regardless of whether it was Bronson, Rocky, Charlotte, or Fry, all of them were struck by this apocalyptic apocalypse. They were all hit by this sudden apocalyptic disaster. Their hair and clothes fluttered wildly in the wind. Their bodies were also pushed back a few steps by the impact. Their chests felt stuffy, as if they were about to vomit blood. It was extremely uncomfortable. Like leaves in a storm, everyone present ignited the magic power in their bodies with all their might to resist the incoming magic whirlwind. At the same time, they raised their hands to block their bodies. At the same time, they raised their heads. Looking forward, there was only a single emotion in their eyes and faces. Astonishment. Impossible. Being in the midst of the magic whirlwind, Rocky was astonished. With great difficulty, he spat out those words. How could a human possess this level of magic power? That guy. Charlotte raised her hand. She raised her hand to block her eyes. However, she did not close her eyes. She stared at the figure in the center of the magic whirlwind with a complicated expression on her face. So he's actually this powerful. Who is he? Even Bronson was gritting his teeth. He was unable to conceal the astonishment in his eyes. Is he really just a student? Even a real demon king wouldn't have this level of magic power, right? Could it be an individual with a special bloodline? Questions filled the minds of everyone present, but no one could answer them. At this moment, the only thing that entered their ears was a heart-chilling laugh. You want me to trade with the people around me? As if his body was on fire, Wu Yan's entire body was emitting a dense flame. His magic power was like boiling water that had been released from the dam, gushing to every corner of the scene. Wu Yan, who was in the center of the magic storm, stared at Bronson with a smile on his face, but his eyes were cold. Do you think that the whole world is filled with filthy things like you who treat life as trash and think that they value life highly? You. Bronson's handsome face was twisted with anger. If Wu Yan's tone was aggressive when he spoke to Bronson, then now, he was looking down on Bronson. He didn't even try to hide it. I'm not negotiating with you. Wu Yan retracted some of his magic power and shot a piercing glare at Bronson. You have to understand that I'm threatening you. Threatening? Bronson's eyes widened. You still don't understand? Wu Yan spat. Anyway, the rabbi is in the academy. As long as one of the puppeteers inspects this Garm series automaton, the fact that the rabbi is a bandolier will be exposed. Do you think that the divine works can stay out of this matter? Do you really think that the divine works can stay out of this matter? Are you trying to threaten me with a snitch? Bronson tried his best to maintain his composure, but under the suppression of the overwhelming magic power, the elegant smile on his face was as ugly as it could get. Do you think that a divine works didn't infiltrate the judicial department? Do you think that divine works will be punished in the end? I told you that you're not an idiot, but if you think that a divine works is safe after infiltrating the judicial department, then I'll have to change my assessment. Wu Yan sneered. Could it be that you, a new mechanic workshop, have the ability to infiltrate the judicial department and the Magicians Association that manages all magicians? Bronson's face turned pale. Don't think that you're the only smart person in the world. The members of the Magicians Association have a better sense of smell than dogs. Do you think no one knows what you're doing in the dark? Wu Yan looked at Bronson with pity in his eyes. Don't tell me you think there's no one from the Magicians Association in the academy? Do you need me to introduce you to them? Bronson finally understood what Wu Yan meant by threat. If Wu Yan really did know someone from the Magicians Association, then that the divine works would be targeted by the Magicians Association. And if he was targeted by the Magicians Association, Bronson's secret activities in the divine works would be exposed sooner or later. At that time, Bronson would be in deep trouble just by touching the taboo and using his naked body to create a forbidden doll. Not to mention, the things he did were far more than that. For the first time, hesitation appeared on Bronson's face. The Magicians Association was a bystander. They never interfered with national politics and were only responsible for managing the taboo and code of conduct of magicians. If the divine works wanted to assassinate a government official, the Magicians Association wouldn't pay any attention to them. Even if they found out, the most they would do was inform the country's judiciary and let them deal with it. However, if the divine works created bandoliers and violated the taboo of magicians, the Magicians Association would sniff them out like a dog and stick to the divine works like a bug. Once it was confirmed that the divine works had violated the taboo, there would be no mercy left. That was why the Magicians Association was Bronson's most feared enemy. If Wu Yan really knows someone from the Magicians Association, and if he exposed the fact that the Garm series automaton is a bandolier, he's not going to be able to do anything about it. Bronson didn't want to imagine the consequences. Wu Yan was right. This wasn't a negotiation or a deal. It was a threat. Bronson was silent. Following Bronson's silence, the storm of magic gradually calmed down. Charlotte, Flay, and Rocky looked at Wu Yan with complicated expressions before looking at Bronson. They were waiting for his decision. I understand, after a long time, Bronson looked at Wu Yan coldly. I hope you can keep your mouth shut as well. Flay was finally unable to conceal the joy in her eyes. Charlotte and Rocky's expressions also relaxed. Wu Yan seemed to have known this would happen. He didn't show any expression and only glanced at Bronson. Let me give you another piece of advice. Don't do things you shouldn't do. One should know when to stop, sir. Bronson's tone became unfriendly. Are you planning to use this to threaten me for the rest of my life? No, as long as you keep your word, I won't bring this matter up again. Wu Yan turned around and left everyone with a view of his back. However, if you do something you shouldn't do, I will give you a big surprise. After saying that, Wu Yan left without looking back. Seeing that, Charlotte hurriedly chased after Bronson. As for Rocky and Flay, they were speechless as they saw Bronson's gloomy appearance. Chapter 1637. Walpurgis King Mechanical Engineering Academy. The main entrance, Bronson was standing by the window of the reception room and looking into the distance. His hands were placed behind his back as he maintained his posture. He remained silent. Rocky and Flay were standing at the entrance of the reception room. They were looking at Bronson's back. One of them had an expressionless face and could even be said to be a little cold. The other had a slightly pale face and her head was lowered. She looked as if she wanted to leave the scene. Compared to Wu Yan's situation, a heavy feeling that made one's heart beat was slowly spreading in the air. It made Bronson's back look very daring. As Rocky and Flay looked at his back that was filled with boldness, they both understood one thing. Their adoptive father was very angry right now. It was only natural that he would be angry. After all, just a moment ago, the adoptive father of the night gathering, the man who almost became the Devil King and was still the new leader of the mechanic workshop, was threatened by a brat who was still studying in the academy. Moreover, it was a threat that forced him to compromise. Even though Bronson usually behaved like an aloof gentleman and did not show any obvious emotions towards anything, Rocky and Flay knew that their adoptive father was much colder and crueler than he appeared to be. Bronson had clearly planned to scrap the GARM series of automaton, but now, the GARM series was about to be scrapped. However, he lied to Flay and gave her hope so that she could fight. It could be seen from this. Moreover, with Rocky and Flay's understanding of what Bronson had done and what he and his sister had done, lying to him was just a small matter. Bronson had done a lot of truly cruel things. Naturally, such a cold and cruel person would have a strong sense of self-esteem. He was threatened by a brat who was still studying in the academy. For Bronson, it should be an indescribable humiliation. Bronson did not show the anger in his heart on his face. However, his body was faintly fluctuating. An obscure magic power that was difficult to control appeared clearly in Rocky and Flay's senses. Therefore, Rocky and Flay knew very well. Bronson was very angry right now. However, Bronson was not the only one who was angry. Rocky and Flay were also very angry. Of course, the reason why the siblings were angry was definitely not because Bronson was threatened. At least, Flay was not angry. Now, Flay was certain of it. Bronson was indeed deceiving her. He had no intention of letting Flay's family return the GARM series automaton to her. How could Flay not be angry? Unfortunately, no matter how angry she was, she could not show it. Flay knew very well that if she disobeyed Bronson, her ending would not be any better than the GARM series automaton that was originally going to be abandoned. If the GARM series automaton was destined to be abandoned, then it might be possible for Flay to disobey Bronson after learning that he had deceived her. However, Bronson had already promised to give the GARM series automaton to Wu Yan. Wu Yan had also promised to return Flay's family to her. Everything was progressing in a good direction. As for her anger, she decided to hide it in her heart. Driven by this thought, Flay continued to act as if she wanted to leave this place. As for Rocky, his red eyes were flickering non-stop. He was clenching his fists tightly. No one knew what he was thinking. After maintaining this incomparably heavy silence, Bronson finally spoke after the sun had set. Flay's delicate body trembled. An expression of fear appeared on her face. However, that expression of fear soon disappeared. She continued to lower her head and remain silent. However, she took a step forward. Bronson seemed to have sensed Flay's movement. With an emotionless voice, he said those words. "Are you the one who betrayed me?" Bronson should be asking about the leaking of the secret that the Garm series automaton was a forbidden doll, right? After all, the difference between a forbidden doll and an ordinary automaton was that a forbidden doll was capable of generating its own magic power to a certain extent, whereas an automaton was unable to do so. If no one leaked the secret that the Garm series automaton was a forbidden doll, then as long as Raby did not lose control of himself, no one would be able to discover this matter. However, Wu Yan knew about this matter. Because of that, it was normal for Bronson to suspect Flay. However, Bronson's words nearly caused Flay to lose control of herself. Betrayal? Speaking of which, Bronson, who had deceived Flay, was the one who had truly betrayed Flay. However, it would appear that Bronson did not feel the slightest bit of guilt for his actions. In fact, he even felt that it was only natural for him to do so. How shameless was he? Flay bit her lips without leaving a trace. She lowered her voice and spoke. No, that was indeed not the case. Flay did not mention the fact that the Garm series automaton was a forbidden doll. It was Wu Yan who suddenly exposed it when he was talking to Flay. Flay did not know why Wu Yan would know about this matter. However, it was precisely because Wu Yan had seen through her that Flay revealed all of her difficulties. Thus, from the very beginning, Flay had only revealed her difficulties to Wu Yan. She did not mention anything else. It was unknown whether Bronson trusted her or not. However, he nodded his head lightly. Since you've said it like that, I'll believe you. After saying that, Bronson turned around and expressionlessly looked at Flay, who had her head lowered. In that case, did you manage to find out about that brat's automaton? Hearing those words, Flay started biting her lips again. Not only did he deceive her, after the matter was exposed, he actually acted as if nothing had happened and wanted her to work for him. Flay once again realized how ruthless and cruel her adoptive father was. She could not help but raise her voice. No, right after she said that, Flay felt the scene before her eyes turn dark. Unknowingly, Bronson had arrived before Flay. He looked at her coldly and raised his hand. A slap was ruthlessly sent toward Flay's face. Slap. A sharp and clear sound echoed through the reception room. That was, without a doubt, the sound of a slap. However, the person who was slapped was not Flay. Flay raised her head in shock and looked before her. In front of Flay and Bronson, a person was standing there. Surprisingly, that person was Loki. It was Loki who stood before Flay and used his own face to receive Bronson's slap. Loki? At that moment, Flay spoke in a confused manner. Bronson's gaze grew colder and colder. He looked at Loki, who stood before Flay. My complacent son, are you planning to disobey me? Lord Father. Loki did not even bother to pay attention to his swollen face. He raised his head and fearlessly met Bronson's ice-cold gaze. He opened his mouth and said those words. I will seek out Scarlet Eyes for a duel. Hearing those words, Flay was startled. Bronson also frowned. Soon after, he understood Loki's intention. Do you want to use the duel to investigate the information of those automaton? No. Loki spoke coldly. If there's a chance, I'll sabotage the automaton and bring their magic circuits back in person. Loki. This time, Flay became anxious. Bronson's eyes flickered. Then, he smiled lightly. Very well, I'll leave this matter to you. Yes, Loki turned around and walked out. A drop of dark red blood flowed down from the corner of his mouth. The reason for that was because he had bitten his lips. Chapter 1639. Go. Angel Ji. Manned. Under the limited light, the automaton named Cherub raised its steel head and reflected the light into flickering arcs. One of Loki's hands had already reached out to Cherub. Rays of magic power shot out from his hand like a gun and connected to Cherub's body, causing Cherub's body to surge with magic power. He then converted this magic power into power and activated the magic circuit in his body. Buzz, the space around Cherub Archangel trembled. A hot wind of at least a few thousand degrees rose from Cherub Archangel's body and enveloped her. At the same time, Angel Cherub lowered his body and got into a charging position. The super-hot wind on his body exploded. Boom! Like a jet, Cherub's lower body blasted out a scorching hot gas, pushing him forward with a sharp air-breaking screech. Like a jet, he shot towards Wu Yen with the giant blade in hand. Big brother. Nagisa and Kanon looked at Wu Yen nervously. Master. Ikaros and Astria stared at Wu Yen with their crimson eyes that rippled with illusory square frames. Only Natsuki remained silent. Her gem-like eyes stared at Wu Yen as she waited for Wu Yan's orders. Wu Yan had said that he didn't want the girls to treat him as their master. But now, the girls were playing the role of automaton. Therefore, at the very least, he had to act like an automaton in front of others. What's more, this was a battle. It was natural for the leader to make the decision. Wu Yan didn't raise his hand when he saw Archangel leaving a trail of scorched earth in her wake. Archangel is like a flamethrower. She left a trail of scorched earth in her wake, but Wu Yan didn't raise his hand. A ball of magic power burst out from his shoulder. It poured into Astria's body. Astria, it's your turn. Yes, sir. Astria replied. She held the laser lightsaber in her hand and held it behind her back. A pair of pure white wings spread out. He slammed the door. He pushed Astria out of the room. Whoosh! Amidst the piercing sound that reverberated in the air in unison, the humanoid robot, automaton, riding on the super-hot wind and the angel-like beautiful sword-wielding girl collided head-on. They collided with each other. Clang! Accompanied by the sound of metal clashing against metal, the giant blade that was covered in ultra-high temperature hot wind also clashed against the light sword that was formed from light. It stirred up a strong gust of wind that blew in all directions. When the swords clashed, Astria's crimson eyes flashed. She flapped her wings and charged forward with explosive power. Screech! Sparks flew as the lightsaber and giant blade clashed against each other. Astria raised her sword with an ear-piercing screech. Clang! Archangel was bigger than Astria in terms of size, but Astria was able to deflect Archangel's blade with incredible strength. Ha! Astria shouted and spun in the air like a top. She turned the laser lightsaber into a spinning blade and slashed towards Archangel's neck like a tornado. In the face of such a fierce spinning slash, Angel Cherub dodged to the side, easily allowing the spinning slash of the lightsaber to graze by less than 5 centimeters, evading the attack. When Archangel dodged, everyone in the room felt an unnatural air current erupting in front of her. Archangel's speed was pushed to the limit. Archangel. Loki extended his palm towards Archangel. An even more ferocious magic power materialized into a circle of light that rippled outwards. Archangel's eyes glowed red. The hot air in front of her disappeared in an instant. Instead, an even more intense hot air burst out from behind her. Archangel's retreating figure stopped abruptly due to the hot air behind her. In less than 1,000th of a second, she charged forward again. Archangel's laser lightsaber brushed past Archangel's body and slashed at Astria, who was still spinning. Archangel raised her giant blade without hesitation. The blade glowed with a fiery red luster. She slashed at Astria's waist like a fish on a chopping board. Unfortunately for her, Archangel with wings was no match for Archangel, who relied on hot air to propel herself. Not to mention, Astrea had the most mobility among all archangels. Clang! Astrea froze in mid-air as if she was embedded into space. She maintained her horizontal position. She raised her laser lightsaber to block the slash. Humph. Seeing this situation, the corner of Loki's mouth rose slightly. The magic in his hands surged even more intensely. In an instant, the wings on Angel Cherub's back that were interspersed with sharp spikes spread out. With a bang that was no different from a gunshot, 8 sharp spikes that were like sharp blades with black wires at their ends shot out. They circled in the air, stirring up gusts of air as they descended from the sky. Astrea wielded her laser lightsaber and was in a stalemate with Archangel's greatsword. She was in a stalemate with Archangel's greatsword. If Astrea was pierced by the hot air, her alluring body would be pierced by the spikes. Wu Yan couldn't help but snicker under such circumstances. You sure know how to play tricks. Wu Yan extended his hand and with a hum, his mana turned into ripples of light that rippled outwards. Return the favor. Astrea's gaze sharpened. A whirlwind of mana erupted from her body. Her strength increased by several folds. The laser lightsaber in her hand vibrated violently. Even the giant sword that was locked in a stalemate with the laser lightsaber started vibrating. Screech. An uncomfortable, ear-piercing sound reverberated through the air. Sparks flew in all directions. Under the effect of the laser lightsaber, Angel Cherub felt an unparalleled force spreading from the giant blade in his hand, causing the giant blade to tremble. Clang! Archangel's giant blade was deflected away as if it had slashed a spinning fan that was as hard as steel. Clang 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 clang. Astrea performed a dazzling sword dance. Her sword left afterimages in the air as she deflected the 8 spikes that came down from the sky. TCH. Rocky smacked his lips and waved his hand fiercely. Spin. Angel Ji. I'm ready. Amidst the cold mechanical response, Cherub's body stirred up an extremely hot blast, causing the surrounding air to distort and emit a burnt stench. Riding on the hot wind, Angel Wisdom leaped into the sky and flew into the air. Her figure, which made people think of an angel made of steel, emitted a creaking sound, like the sound of gears sliding. Under the watchful eyes of everyone present, Angel Ji was like a transformed robot. His body had completely changed shape. His shoulders, arms, and greatsword merged together and became a single piece of metal. All the parts on his body combined together in an orderly manner. Not long after, Angel Wisdom transformed into a greatsword. It was a gigantic sword that was taller than a person, more than 2 meters in length. Angel Cherub's face was etched on the hilt of the sword and the blade of the sword. Rocky raised his right hand and grabbed the hilt of Angel Wisdom's greatsword from afar. He swung it down with all his might. The moment Rocky swung his arm, Angel Wisdom's greatsword spun and sliced through the air as if it was thrown by an invisible giant. It whistled through the air and went straight for Astrea. Astrea was surprised. She didn't expect Cherub to be able to transform. However, she still managed to dodge the attack by flapping her wings and retreating like a flash of light. TCH. When Astrea dodged, the spinning greatsword scraped against the ground, creating a crack in the ground. Whether it was scraped by the greatsword or the crack, scorch marks appeared on the surface. Chapter 1640. Many of the people present were speechless when they saw the huge sword that Cherub had transformed into cut open. It was as if it had been burned by the huge sword that Cherub had transformed into. Archangel's greatsword was a terrifying weapon to begin with. It wouldn't be surprising if a part of one's body was missing after being sliced by such a weapon. Unfortunately, the magic circuit that Cherub was equipped with was the hot wind manipulation, which allowed her to freely use the magic of ultra-hot wind. With the addition of the super high temperature of several thousand degrees and the 2-meter-tall sword, what else could the Cherub not cut open? Perhaps even a meter-thick steel would be sliced in half in just a second. Even if Astrea wasn't under the level restriction, her soft body would be sliced in half by Archangel's slash, let alone Astrea who was currently under the level restriction. Of course, that was when Astrea was hit by the sword. With Astria's extreme speed, close-range combat ability, and outstanding reflexes, Archangel wouldn't be able to land a hit on Astria unless Archangel could force Astria to reveal an opening. Yao Wang spun in the air, creating waves of heat as it whistled through the air. The blade of the greatsword glowed with a fiery red glow. Archangel drew a fiery red arc in the air. Wu Yan narrowed his eyes at the sight of Archangel, who looked like she was covered in flames. So that's how it is. This is the origin of the landing code name, Burning Flame Sword, indeed. Waves of heat rolled out, and the entire blade of the greatsword was covered in a fiery red glow. It drew a circular fiery red arc in the air, as if it was burning with flames. The constantly rotating greatsword indeed looked like a rotating flaming sword. The login codename, Burning Flame Sword, was very concise. It fully showcased Loki's most impressive trait. There was no doubt about it. This flaming sword spinning in the sky was definitely the most impressive part of Loki's automaton! Burning blazing sword. It was worthy of its name. Archangel faced the burning flame sword with several thousand degrees of heat that could melt steel and cut through anything. Astria looked at Wu Yan. She was asking for Wu Yan's opinion. Because Archangel faced the burning flame sword. Astria wasn't afraid, but she was in danger of getting hit. If she got hit, she would be out of the game. She wanted to block the burning flame sword effortlessly. Even Ikaros' Aegis might not be able to withstand it. However, Astria's Aegis is much stronger than Ikaros' Aegis. Aegis is much stronger than Ikaros' Aegis. If she uses Aegis equals 1, Astria is confident she can block the flame sword that can cut through anything. That's why Astria is asking Wu Yan if she can use her Aegis equals L, area of effect shield. If she uses Aegis equals L, Astria won't have to worry about defense anymore. She can attack with all her might. At that time, the outcome of the battle would be decided in less than 10 seconds. Wu Yan thought of the same thing as Astria. After some slight hesitation, he agreed to it. After all, the burning flame sword was already a threat to Astria. It's fine if he couldn't hit her, but if he did, Wu Yan would raise the entire academy to the ground. Even if he didn't care about the outcome, he had to consider Astria's safety. What's more, trump cards and whatnot were meant to be used in times of need. That's why there was no reason to hesitate. Just as Wu Yan was about to nod his head in agreement, something strange happened. Boom! Suddenly, a violent surge of magic power rose from a certain direction outside the arena like a whirlwind, enveloping the entire arena in waves of magic power and causing loud rustling sounds to ring out. This violent magic power did not emerge from Loki's body. Loki didn't have this level of magical power either. Only Wu Yan could turn magical power into waves of magical power. Perhaps in the entire academy, only he could do it. However, the magical power also didn't come from Wu Yan. Instead, it came from Flay, who was standing not far away from Rocky with a confused expression on her face. Loki, who was closest to Flay, widened his eyes. Wu Yan and the other young ladies were also surprised. Magical power that could blow trees away gushed out of Flay's petite body like it was free of charge. On the other hand, Flay's face was filled with panic and bewilderment. It was apparent that Flay didn't know there was such a level of magical power in her body. She didn't even know why the magical power burst out of her body. That was because it wasn't Flay's intention. Flay's magical power went out of control. What's wrong? Nagisa was startled. What's going on? This magical power. Wu Yan looked at Flay in astonishment. That's not a level of magical power that Flay can possess. Or rather, I don't even know if magicians and puppet users can release magical power of this level. This magical power is already comparable to a vampire's. Natsuki's delicate face turned serious. Be careful. I don't think things are that simple. As soon as Natsuki finished her sentence, the magical power on Flay's body erupted once again, setting off violent waves. Loki, who was the closest to Flay, was caught unprepared. The waves of mana hit his body and blew him away. Loki. Flay was startled. Then, her face turned pale and revealed a pained expression. Ayo. Right at this moment, Raby, who was standing beside Flay, suddenly let out a roar filled with madness. The little bit of intelligence in his eyes immediately disappeared and was replaced by complete madness. The astonishing magical power surging out from Flay's body entered Raby's body. It caused Raby to appear as if his body was covered in golden steam. As he roared, he began to absorb Flay's magical power. Soon after, Raby's body trembled. His appearance also began to change. His thin and weak shoulders began to swell. His claws began to elongate. His black hair began to stand on end like a hedgehog. Even his teeth became sinister and sharp. His body doubled in size. He no longer resembled a dog. Instead, he resembled a tiger. In a short instant, Raby's appearance changed completely. His aura also became much stronger. His eyes were filled with madness and saliva was dripping from the corner of his mouth. He resembled a wild beast. Raby. Raby. Flay had an expression of pain on her face as she released her enormous magical power. She looked on helplessly as Raby underwent an unprecedented transformation. Ayo. Raby raised his head and roared. His roar caused the surrounding atmosphere to tremble. Enormous magical power filled his entire body. Woo. Ah. 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 At the same time, Flay started to whimper inaudibly. Her knees grew weak and she fell to the ground. Due to her slender yet voluptuous body releasing more magical power than her body could handle, her muscles began to emit popping noises. Her muscles were damaged all over and blood was seeping out from them. Seeing this scene, Loki, who had just climbed up from the ground, narrowed his eyes fiercely. The group of girls cried out in alarm. Even Natsuki had an astonished expression on her face. As for Ikaros, her eyes trembled. She immediately wanted to rush over to Flay. However, Wu Yan grabbed Ikaros' hand and looked to Flay, who was lying on the ground with an ugly expression on his face. He already knew what was going on. Ah. 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 Before the attentive gazes of all the people present, Flay appeared to be unable to endure the pain from her body. She screamed miserably and began to struggle on the ground with a painful expression on her face. However, the more Flay struggled, the more her skin ruptured. Her blood also began to seep out even more violently. Soon, the ground where Flay was lying on turned into a small pool of blood. Guji. In the past, Raby would definitely rush over to his master's miserable state. But now, he did not even bother to take a glance at his master. He bared his teeth and glared at Wu Yan with his blood-red eyes. Bang! Raby stomped on the ground with his powerful hind legs. Without any warning, he charged toward Wu Yan, who was looking at him with an ugly expression on his face. Chapter 1641. Roar. Full of madness, a beast-like roar shook the space, mixed with a majestic and chaotic magic power. It was as if a typhoon was blowing to every corner of the scene. Read the latest novellas. The beast-like roar sounded. The owner of the roar, Raby, opened his mouth that was dripping saliva and filled with razor-sharp teeth. He gathered his mana. At the next moment, like an invisible mortar, an invisible shell with a violent impact shot out from Raby's mouth. It dug up the soil on the ground, sliced through the atmosphere, and tore through space, shooting straight ahead. It was an impact shell composed of sound controlled by the sound pressure manipulation magic. The target of the impact shell composed of sound pressure was Wu Yan, who was still fighting with Loki and the angel a moment ago. Flay's automaton suddenly barged into the battlefield and attacked Wu Yan. Master. Ikaros flapped her pink wings and arrived before Wu Yan. She extended her arm and propped up the Aegis barrier, protecting Wu Yan, Natsuki, Nagisa, and Kanon. Boom! Almost at the same time as the Aegis barrier was propped up, the sound pressure shell shot out from the front. It landed heavily on the Aegis, absolute defense circle, causing a cloud of dust and a muffled sound to be heard. Roar. Robbie, who had transformed into a tiger, did not care if his attack was effective or not. He roared as he dashed forward madly. He blasted out cannonballs made of sound pressure and bombarded the enemy continuously. Boom. 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 But Rabi still ignored them. It was certain that Rabi had completely lost his mind. Now. It was a wild beast that only knew how to attack. However, this beast did not attack others. Instead, he only locked onto one target. He kept releasing the sound pressure manipulation magic, releasing sound pressure cannons that were comparable to real cannonballs. Ah! As Rabi continued to use magic without restraint, more and more magic power surged out from Flay's body. Replenished the Ruby's body and supported in releasing magic. Immediately, Flay's skin ruptured again. Even more blood gushed out from her body. Robbie. Robbie. Even though Flay's injuries were clearly painful to see, even though she was in so much pain that she was unable to even stand and could only lie on the ground, she completely ignored her injuries and pain. She only cared about struggling and extending her hand toward the crazy Robbie. It was obvious that Flay wanted to control her automaton. However, Rabi did not have the slightest intention of responding to Flay. He continued to release sound pressure artillery shells into the center of the increasingly dense smoke and dust. Flay's control was completely ineffective. In this sort of situation, Flay wanted to directly use force domination to control Rabi. However, force domination required a high degree of concentration. At this moment, Flay's entire body was howling in pain. How was she supposed to concentrate? Beside him, Rocky looked at Flay, who was lying on the ground with blood dripping from her body. However, she was still persistently extending her hand toward Robbie in an attempt to control him. Seeing this, Rocky clenched his teeth hatefully and turned his head around to look at Robbie. Angel G. I'm ready. Angel Cherub lowered his body, and the wings with spikes on his back spread open. Bang! 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 Sharp spikes shot out from his wings like bullets. Poochie! The spike flashed through the air and sliced through Robbie's body, leaving a hideous wound on his abdomen. Roar! Robbie let out a howl of pain. Immediately after, the crazed expression in his eyes became even more intense. The magical fluctuations on his body also became more and more intense. Amidst the intense magical fluctuations, the wound on Robbie's abdomen suddenly started bubbling like sarcoma-like bubbles. With a rise and fall, the wound on Robbie's abdomen seemed to have been filled with new flesh and blood. It was completely healed. Rocky was startled. Although the wound from earlier was not fatal, it was enough to make an automaton lose its ability to move. Such an injury was actually healed in an instant. Rocky never knew that the GARM series of automaton possessed such a powerful regenerative ability. However, in the next second, Rocky understood the origin of that powerful regenerative ability. There was a price to pay for that. The instant Robbie's wound healed, the enormous magical power enveloping his body also weakened by more than 80%. At this moment, even more blood flowed out from Flay's body. The blood turned into torrents in the air and shot out like arrows into Rabi's body. This caused Rabi's weakened magic power to instantly recover to its peak state. Looking at this scene, Rocky also understood. Flay's blood has been converted into magical power. That's right. It was impossible for Flay to possess such an enormous amount of magical power. The magical power that caused Robbie to lose control, enlarge, and gain powerful battle strength and powerful regenerative ability were all converted from the blood that was forced out of Flay's body. A human's vitality was a raw material that could be converted into enormous magical power. And the most important factor in a human's body to display vitality was fresh blood. In this world, the fresh blood of a living human was a high-purity magical power conversion agent. In the world of blood frenzy, the amalgamation of magical power, familiars, were also lodged in the blood of vampires. All of this proved that a human's blood was the best raw material that could be converted into magical power. Otherwise, why would vampires, one of the races with the strongest vitality, treat blood as their foundation, and even treat the blood in their bodies as more important than their brains and hearts. This was all because blood was the best raw material that could display vitality and was the most suitable raw material to be converted into magical power. Currently, for some unknown reason, Flay was forcing out the blood in her body and converting it into enormous magical power to replenish Robbie's body. Because this magical power was simply too enormous, Robbie was unable to bear it and thus lost control. Thus, the one who truly lost control was not Robbie but Flay, who was uncontrollably converting her blood into magical power for some unknown reason. Needless to say, the amount of blood in a human's body was naturally limited. If Flay were to continue converting her blood into magical power, she would die sooner or later. This also meant that she absolutely could not attack Robbie. Once she attacked Robbie would automatically convert the magical power into vitality to increase his regenerative ability and heal his injuries. As for the magical power that he lost, he would use Flay's blood as the price to replenish it. That would only hasten Flay's death. Tisk. Loki smacked his lips loudly. Stop. Angel Ji. Yes. Upon receiving Loki's order, Cherub stopped attacking and retracted the other 7 spikes that were about to land on Rabi's body. Roar. At this moment, Rabi roared and leaped forward. With a fierce dash, he pounced on Rocky with a piercing sound. He extended his sharp fangs and tried to bite Rocky's throat. If he was bitten, Rocky would definitely die. No. Robbie. Fry, who was bleeding, shouted with a pale face. However, Rabi still ignored his closest master. Just like that, under the gaze of Loki's narrowed needle-like pupils, he stretched out his sharp canine teeth and bit Loki's throat. Ding! At this moment of imminent peril, a shackle flickering with purple light pierced through the air and coiled around Robbie's body, tying him up in midair. Soon after, a figure appeared behind Fry. That figure extended a hand and pressed it on Frey's head. A weak magical power flowed out from that hand and pierced into Frey's head. Frey's head tilted to the side and she fainted. Robbie let out a whimper. His body was coiled with shackles and he fell to the ground. His body returned to its original size. However, with a bang, a portion of his flesh exploded. Chapter 1642. There is a building not far from the central lecture hall in the Walpurgis Royal Mech Academy. This building is the medical department of the Walpurgis Royal Mech Academy. The academy's infirmary is located in the medical department. Even though the Walpurgis Royal Magic Academy was the best academy in the world of magic, there were only a little over 1,000 students studying here. That is why the Walpurgis Royal Mech Academy doesn't have any advanced medical equipment and facilities. The infirmary is located in the same building as a normal school's infirmary. The scale of the infirmary isn't much bigger than a clinic. There is only one infirmary in the entire academy. Midnight is approaching. Logically speaking, both the medical department and the infirmary should only be left with the staff on duty. It shouldn't be lively. However, at this very moment, in the medical department's school building, there was an extremely noisy noise coming from a corridor near the infirmary. This was because the door at the end of the corridor was being forcefully opened by 2 beautiful girls with angelic wings, one on each side. This woke up the medical staff on duty, who was sitting on the counter and was about to fall asleep. After Ikaros and Astria opened the door, Wu Yen ran in with Flay in his arms. Her clothes were dyed red with blood and her face was pale as a sheet of paper. Natsuki, Nagisa, and Kanon jogged behind Wu Yen. Loki also ran into the corridor with Cherub, who was making clanking noises. The previously silent corridor was filled with noise. The staff on duty wanted to complain. However, when he saw that Flay's clothes were dyed with blood and her pretty face was deathly pale, his expression immediately changed. What happened? She's injured. Wu Yen didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. She lost a lot of blood. Please prepare a blood transfusion for her. How can she be cured with a blood transfusion at this level? The staff on duty pushed a medical stretcher with a small wheel and hurried over. Prepare the treatment immediately. Don't worry, I have more suitable healers here. Please prepare a blood transfusion for her. Wu Yan said. He placed Flay on the stretcher and looked at Cannon. Cannon. I'll leave Flay in your hands. I will provide mana. And Robbie. Nagisa and Astria yelled as they shielded Robbie, who was brutally slung over Archangel's shoulder. Robbie's body was covered in blood. Cannon-chan, I'll leave Robbie in your hands as well. I will do my best. Cannon said nervously. Her tone was filled with nervousness. It's only natural. Even though she has better healing abilities than anyone else. This is the first time Cannon treated herself in such a formal manner. Like a doctor, she was preparing to treat the injured in the infirmary. Originally, Cannon was just an ordinary student. It would be abnormal if she wasn't nervous. However, there was nothing she could do about it. After all, even with her extraordinary healing abilities, Cannon can't produce blood out of thin air. She can't replenish Flay's blood loss. That's why Wu Yan brought Flay and Robbie to the medical department's dormitory and asked them to give Flay a blood transfusion. With Cannon's ability, she can heal Flay's injuries in a matter of minutes. Of course, the medical department didn't know about this. Just as they were about to object, a voice came from the front. Just do as he says. A beautiful woman with bright red hair tied behind her head and a pair of spectacles on her face walked over from the other side of the corridor. She wore a professor's uniform and gave off a cold aura. She's Kimberly. Since he said so, he must have his own way. Kimberly looked at Flay, who was lying on the stretcher, and said without turning her head. So, just do as he says. The medical department's members looked at each other. However, since the academy's professor said so, they had no choice but to do as she said. Pushing the stretcher, the medical department staff pushed Free and Robbie into the infirmary. Cannon followed them into the infirmary. Flay's problem is her excessive blood loss. After giving Flay a blood transfusion and receiving Cannon's treatment, Flay should be fine soon. Robbie is an automaton. He shouldn't be treated by the infirmary. Instead, he should be sent to the mechanical technology department and engineering department for repair. However, Robbie is an automaton made from a living dog. Most of his body is made from real flesh. That's why the mechanical technology department and engineering department can't do anything about Robbie. It's better for Cannon to treat him. That's why she was sent here as well. Natsuki, Nagisa, and Astria remained silent as they watched Cannon and the medical department's members push the stretcher into the infirmary. Loki also remained silent. Only Ikaros looked at Wu Yan with a rare worried expression. Master, don't worry. Wu Yan held Ikaros' hand and comforted her. Cannon's healing ability is outstanding. Flay and Robbie should be fine, Ikaros nodded, but her expression was still gloomy. Anyone who saw her would feel sorry for her. Ikaros isn't familiar with Flay and Robbie at all. However, the way Flay treated Robbie, a weapon and prop, as her family touched Ikaros' heart. Because of that, Ikaros began to pay attention to Flay and Robbie. Ikaros' method of paying attention to them is simple. She doesn't want Flay and Robbie to be harmed. It was a pity that this small wish was mercilessly shattered because of this sudden change in circumstances. Wu Yan's heart felt heavy. He clenched his fist and took a deep breath. He suppressed his emotions and looked at Kimberly. Kimberly-sensei, why are you here? My students are fighting in front of their dorm. Do you think no one will know about this? Kimberly glanced at Wu Yan. I will ask about the details later. For now, let's wait for the master and servant pair to finish their treatment. Wu Yan nodded his head in acknowledgement. Why did this happen? Nagisa stared at the closed door of the infirmary with a depressed expression. Why did Flay suddenly bleed all over her body? Why did her automaton suddenly go berserk? What I can be sure of is that it wasn't the little girl's own will. She seemed to be very confused about what was happening to her body. Clearly, that was the first time she had encountered such a situation in her life. Natsuki frowned. Someone must have done something to that little girl's body, causing the blood in her body to be forcefully forced out and automatically transformed into magic power. Someone did something to her body? Astria tilted her head to the side in confusion. There are many ways to force the blood out of her body. Natsuki looked at Rocky, who was standing at the back of the room with a pale face. I'm afraid someone planted a spell that can forcefully generate mana into the little girl's body. Other than Wu Yen, who had his head lowered, and Rocky, who had a terrible expression, everyone else's expression changed. Someone planted a spell that can forcefully generate mana into her body? Thus, earlier, it was that magic method that forcibly produced magic power that transformed Flay's blood into magic power that caused Flay to lose control? I see. Kimberly sneered. A part of Flay's body was made into a magic circuit that forcefully generates mana. Part of the child's body has been mechanized. Kimberly looked at Loki. Since the blood was converted into mana, this part should be the core that drives the blood flow, right? Heart. Na Yu calmly spat out these words. That little girl's heart has been replaced by a mechanism composed of magic circuits. Natsuki's words struck Nagisa, Ikaros, and Astria's hearts like a hammer. Had the heart been replaced by a mechanism composed of magic circuits? Didn't that mean that someone had replaced Flay's heart with the magic circuits mechanism? Modifying a human body. This is taboo. Who could have done such a thing? There was no one present who couldn't guess the answer. Who else could it be other than Bronson? Chapter 1643. Not only did Bronson violate the taboo, but he also used a woman's body to conduct experiments and developed the Dgarm series of automaton. He even modified Flay's body and modified her heart. This was what Bronson had done to his own daughter. Not only did he deceive Flay and make her go to the battlefield of the night gathering in order to ensure that the Dgarm series automaton could survive, forcing her to have no choice but to kill Lei Jin. He even modified Flay's body. Was this something a father could do? Divine Works has long since decided to abandon the Dgarm automaton. However, they're still using the comparison of performance as a reason to send Flay to the battlefield. Wu Yen slowly raised his head. His emotionless voice echoed in the surroundings. Divine Works didn't ask you to join the night meeting to compare the performance of the Dgarm series automaton and the Angel series automaton, right? These words were obviously directed at Rocky, who was standing at the back with an ugly expression on his face. Perhaps, Bronson really did want you to seize the throne of the Demon King. He wanted Divine Works to obtain the right to research the taboo, but Flay was doing an experiment. At that instant, Natsuki, Nagisa, Kimberly, and the others almost didn't understand what Wu Yen meant by the experiment. They only understood after a while. It was an experiment to see if Flay's heart could operate normally and produce results. Kimberly raised her head abruptly and enunciated each word clearly. Pro-lusty children, Loki's shoulders trembled strongly. They're born with powerful magic power. Their bodies also possess extremely high magic power affinity. No matter if they're puppeteers or magicians, they're all excellent species. The probability of them being born is 1 in a million. Kimberly's sharp gaze landed on Loki. You and Flay are both confused children created by the people of the Divine Works. Am I right? Nagisa looked like she was punched in the face. Her petite body swayed. Astria's face turned a little pale. Ikaros' eyes fluctuated. Even Natsuki furrowed her brows. Artificial camouflage children. Because there was no way to be born with powerful magic power. That's why the heart was installed with a magic circuit that forcibly produced magic power. It was modified into a mechanical heart. It was used to replace the deficiency in this part. Due to the mechanical heart's operation, the body took on too much of the burden and the pigment was destroyed. That's why the hair turned pearl white, the pupils turned red and the skin turned white. This was the origin of the artificial, camouflage children. This was also the origin of Flay and Loki. Liar. Nagisa covered her mouth as if she would vomit if she didn't do so. Her eyes filled with tears. Is it really possible to modify human beings? Why can't Kimberly said calmly. Wouldn't it be a tempting idea to mass-produce the pro-camouflage children, who are born with magic power and destined to become extraordinary puppeteers and magicians? Mechanically modify the hearts of ordinary people to create pro-camouflage children. If it succeeds, we'll have an item that's destined to have a certain power in the future. If it fails, we can still use the organs that haven't completely died to make an automaton. Natsuki's voice slowly turned cold as well. That's how the automaton of the GARM series was born, isn't it? If the modification succeeds, everything will be fine. Even if the modification fails, we can still use it to create a forbidden doll. It's a good deal without any waste. It's a good plan for a new mechanic workshop, isn't it? Everyone fell silent. Without a doubt, an emotion similar to anger quietly spread in the hearts of these people. Including Loki. If that's the case, why did Miss Flay's heart activate during the battle between Big Bro and Miss Flay's brother? Nagisa bit her lips. Based on Big Bro's words, isn't that damned Bronson trying to test Miss Flay's heart's function during the night meeting? No one answered Nagisa's question. However, Natsuki, Kimberly, and Loki seemed to have guessed the answer. They turned to look at Wu Yen. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Wu Yen opened his wine-red eyes. Bronson did something to Flay's body and made her heart activate when I was fighting with Loki. He also did something to Ruby's body and made the berserk Ruby lock onto me and kill me. What? Nagisa sucked in a cold breath of air. Natsuki, Ikaros, and Astria had a cold glint in their eyes. Only Kimberly looked at Wu Yen with surprise. Why did he want to kill you? I have something on him. Wu Yen smiled as if he was talking about someone else. But he can't touch me, a student of the academy. Otherwise, the Autonomous Academy has the right to execute him. So, he made that little girl's heart go out of control and her automaton went berserk to kill you. Natsuki pouted. In this way, regardless of whether it succeeds or not, the blame can be pushed to the automaton and even that little girl, right? Hearing this, before anyone could react, Loki turned around and walked towards the door at the end of the corridor with Cherub in tow. Where are you going? Kimberly spoke in an extremely calm tone as if she had seen through Loki's thoughts. Let me remind you, if you plan to bring your automaton out of the academy, not only will your automaton be confiscated and disassembled, you will also be expelled. By then, you will no longer be qualified to participate in the night meeting. Loki's footsteps stopped abruptly. Just as Kimberly had said, Loki was planning to bring his automaton out of the academy. It's good to fight for your sister, but if you're just going to be beaten up, nothing will change, Kimberly sighed and warned Loki. What's more, you're no match for Bronson. As his adopted son and a puppet user personally trained by him, you should know this very well, shouldn't you? Loki didn't say anything. It was a while before he replied. Although I am humble and forgiving, there are 3 kinds of people I can never forgive. Those who order me around, those who resist me, and, Loki turned around and revealed a cold smile. Bastards who schemed against my sister and tried to push her into the abyss. This time, not only were the other girls surprised, but even Natsuki was surprised. Didn't Loki hate Flay so much that he killed Robbie just to make her give up on the night meeting? However, judging from the unconcealable rage in Loki's eyes when he said those words, it was obvious he wasn't lying. What was going on? You're quite smart. Kimberly hugged her arms. But, as a professor of the school, do you think I'll just watch you break the rules? Before Loki could reply, Wu Yen suddenly spoke. In that case, I can go out without the automaton, right? Kimberly and Loki were both stunned when they heard this. Chapter 1644. Liverpool, Mechanized City. In the outskirts of Liverpool, some distance away from the mechanized city of Liverpool, there were several buildings that looked like rich farmers' mansions standing in the middle of an empty field. It was surrounded by a wall. It was completely made of thick and unadorned stone bricks. There were a few stone buildings that looked like ancient stone castles. It was very imposing, but it was simple and unadorned like a farmer's house. Inside the wall, there was a silo that looked like a clock tower, a stone building that looked like a house, a tall tower that looked like a castle, and a livestock house made of stone. At first glance, such a place looked like a farm that specialized in raising livestock and breeding meat. However, on the signboard at the entrance of the wall, the words orphanage were clearly written. However, if this was an orphanage, the situation inside was too out of place. Inside the building, there were men with hunting rifles in their hands and uniform patrolling the area vigilantly. The security was extremely tight, and some of them even brought along automatons that were obviously made up of machines. They didn't let their guard down for even a second as they kept their vigilance on the surroundings. Did an orphanage have to be so heavily guarded? Even if it was the army that protected the military provisions and transported the provisions, it would be more or less guarded. Therefore, if one were to carefully observe this farm-like orphanage, one would be surprised. Everything here was so out of place with the word orphanage. It was very suspicious. In one of these suspicious buildings, Bronson was standing there with his hands behind his back. Behind him were people in white coats, who looked like doctors and experts. The building was pitch black and there was no light at all. The surrounding doors and windows. Except for the entrance. The rest of the building was surrounded by iron fences. Other than the iron fences on the doors and windows, there was no furniture or utensils. There were only 2 rows of iron cages. Inside the iron cages. The cages were of different sizes, shapes, and breeds. There were all kinds of Great Danes, Golden Retrievers, Shepherd dogs, Doberman dogs, Collies, and even mixed-breed hunting dogs, police dogs, and military dogs. They were all mercilessly locked up. They were lying listlessly in the iron cages. Their fur was slightly dull, as if they had not been carefully taken care of for some time. Their spirits were also extremely low. Their eyes were tightly shut, and only their ears and noses were moving, proving that they were alive. Apart from that, the limbs and shoulders of these various breeds of dogs were equipped with steel-like armor. Automaton. Although they were of different breeds, these automatons were all modified from real dogs and implanted with breasts. They were the same model as Rabi, the Garm's series of automatons. In other words, these automatons, lying listlessly in the iron cages, were all Flay's family members whom she had risked her life to save. At this moment, Bronson was standing in the middle of the Garm series automaton, which was locked in an iron cage like a prisoner. His eyes were filled with coldness as he looked at these canines. The Garm series of automaton was once the proud work of Bronson's Divine Works. It was because of these proud works that Divine Works was able to obtain the exclusive right to operate the sonic manipulation. It was also the reason why Divine Works was able to enter the eyes of the British government and become a strong candidate for the next generation's main mechanical force. But now, these automaton were just a bunch of eyesore dogs in Bronson's eyes. Not only did they require a certain amount of funds to maintain, but their performance was also slowly falling out of Bronson's sight. They were also very unstable. Once the secret of their creation was discovered, Bronson would be arrested. How could Bronson find these dog-shaped automatons pleasing to the eye? Not to mention, all of them were now being used by others to threaten him. If it was not for the fact that he had not confirmed Wu Yan's death, Bronson would have declared these eyesore automaton useless. He would have cut them into pieces and thrown them into the sewers. That's right. The reason why Flay's mechanical heart suddenly went out of control was indeed because of Bronson. If Flay lost control during the duel with Loki and Rabi suddenly barged into the battlefield to attack Wu Yan, there was a high chance that Wu Yan would die under Rabi's sharp teeth. After all, Wu Yan was willing to threaten Bronson just to help Flay. Even if he reacted in time, he would not be able to do anything to Rabi. On top of that, Flay's heart went out of control again. She was in danger of dying at any moment. Wu Yan would be even more cautious because of this and would be restricted in every way. It was not impossible for him to die under Rabi's sharp teeth. Of course, Bronson felt that Wu Yan would not die so easily. Therefore, if Wu Yan did not die, then these automaton would be a means for Bronson to protect himself. With these automaton, even if Wu Yan knew that it was Bronson who did something to Flay and held a grudge against him, he would not directly report Bronson to the Magicians Association. If that was the case, Wu Yan would not be able to guarantee that Bronson would not destroy these automaton. Therefore, even if Wu Yan did not die, Bronson would bring these automaton to him tomorrow and negotiate with him. Based on how much Wu Yan cares about Flay, using these automatons can be considered as a write-off. Otherwise, if they were to break up, the chances of success would be 100%. Bronson was very confident in this kind of negotiation. After all, grasping a person's weakness was one of Bronson's specialties. Of course, Bronson was not the kind of person who would obediently hand over a hostage. Who knows if Wu Yan would go back on his words? Therefore, Bronson had come here to plant a safety net in the automaton's body. Bronson did not turn around. He used a cold voice to issue an order. Drag all these automaton into the workshop and add a component that disrupts the flow of magic power to the magic circuit. Hearing this, the staff standing behind Bronson were secretly shocked. One must know that the magic circuit of an automaton was directly connected to Eve's heart. Once a component that disrupted the flow of magic power was added to the magic circuit, and the component worked and disrupted the flow of the magic circuit of the automaton would be crushed, and Eve's heart would be damaged too. The automaton could be repaired no matter how damaged it was. Only Eve's heart, if it was damaged, it would be beyond saving. Bronson, this is equivalent to burying a bomb in the body of an automaton. Just hit it directly into the magic circuit. You don't have to worry about whether it will affect the body. Moreover, once the settings are touched, the magic power will be disrupted. Bronson waved his hand after finishing his sentence in an indifferent tone. By tomorrow, all the components must be completed. Yes. The workers did not resist and answered respectfully. Bang. 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 Suddenly, there was a commotion outside and a series of gunshots reverberated in the air. Then, there was a series of screams. What's going on? The workers turned pale with fright. What happened? Bronson frowned. He had an ominous feeling in his heart, telling him that he had miscalculated something. Driven by this ominous premonition, Bronson rushed out of the building without saying a word and looked in the direction of the entrance. At the next moment, Bronson's pupils shrunk and he knitted his brows deeply. Chapter 1645. Alim under the dusky night sky that looked like it was about to rain, the chaotic sounds of gunshots, rioting and screams all disappeared the second before Bronson rushed out. When Bronson rushed out of the building and arrived outside, the scene he saw could be described as hell to some extent. The guards who were in charge of patrolling the area were all lying on the ground with smoking shotguns in their hands. On their bodies, blood flowed out from various damaged parts like a pool of blood, dyeing the ground red. Around these guards who were lying in a pool of blood, there were also automaton, with wires and engine oil scattered all over the ground like corpses that had been dismembered. The smell of blood spread in the air. The smell of gunpowder and magic power shuttled back and forth in the air. With the guards and automatons lying on the ground, it was hard to tell if they were dead or alive. Together with the bloody scene, those who were not brave enough would have fainted. What was wrong with calling such a scene hell? But in the center of such a hellish scene, at the entrance of the gate, a figure stood there. Wearing the uniform of the Walpurgis King Mechanic Academy and a knee-length black coat that looked like a knight's robe, the figure had his back to Bronson. He stood in the middle of the bloody ground, the guards lying on the ground, and the dismembered automatons. Magic ripples visible to the naked eye were fluctuating around the figure with his back to Bronson. The magic ripples turned into a tangible force that covered the pitch-black blades, swords, spears, and halberds. The surface of these weapons was covered with a layer of dim light. Telekinesis. The intruder used telekinesis. He controlled the pitch-black weapons and used them to take down all the guards here, destroying them one by one. the performance was not too bad. It was definitely not a good automaton either. An intruder. And Bronson had only seen him once. But he was very familiar with this intruder. Staring at the figure who was standing in the middle of the guards and automaton who were lying on the ground with black weapons floating around him, Bronson muttered with a gloomy expression. Scarlet eyes, the intruder. Of course, it was Wu Yan. Yo, President Bronson. Wu Yan turned around and looked up, revealing a pair of wine-red eyes to Bronson. His face was calm as he spoke indifferently. We meet again. Indeed, we meet again. Bronson glanced at the guards lying in a pool of blood. It was just a glance and he no longer paid attention to them as if they were not his people but strangers. He cast his sharp gaze on Wu Yan. And under such circumstances, such a time, such a scene, this really surprised me. Actually, I don't want to see that face of yours anymore. Wu Yan spoke in an indifferent tone, his wine-red eyes flashing with a cold light. Unfortunately, I said that if you do something you shouldn't do, I will give you a big surprise. Indeed, it is quite a surprise. Bronson sighed, as if he was regretting something. I didn't expect you to violate the rules of the Walpurgis Academy by going out in the middle of the night. I'm afraid you will be expelled. This won't be the last time we meet, right? The Academy doesn't have a rule that prohibits students from going out in the middle of the night, only that automatons can't go out. Wu Yan looked at Bronson disapprovingly. So, President Bronson, I'm sorry to disappoint you. At most, I will be punished by the head teacher or the dormitory supervisor. However, this will indeed be the last time we meet. Of course. Bronson said with a smile that came from the bottom of his heart. Although there isn't a rule that prohibits students from going out in the middle of the night, I remember there is a rule in the academy. If a student attacks a commoner, they will be sentenced to death. Sir, are you looking for death? I'm sorry to disappoint President Bronson as well. Wu Yan retracted his expression and walked towards Bronson step by step. I'm here to be the messenger of justice. I'm here to dig out all the disgusting experiments you've conducted here, including the modifications you've done to the human body, the dissection and the abandonment of the human body. Bronson's breath caught in his throat. Those artificial pro-camouflage children should all be here, right? Wu Yan glanced at the buildings around him. Also, those failed modifications that were intended to be used to make bandoliers should also be stored here, right? Bronson's expression changed again and again, finally turning into a murderous expression. You sure know a lot. You won't live long if you keep doing that, Sir Scarlet Eyes. What a coincidence. In many people's eyes, I deserve to die, but I'm still alive. Wu Yan raised his hand. So, you'll have to kill me right here, or you'll be the one who dies. Wu Yan waved his hand and the black weapons that were locked in place by Wu Yan's telekinesis shuddered. They tilted and aimed at Bronson with their sharp points. They sliced through the air and landed on Bronson without mercy. What a joke. Facing the pitch-black weapons falling down like raindrops, Bronson spat out these creepy words. You didn't even bring your automaton with you and you dare come here? You're digging your own grave. This way, Bronson won't have to think of another way to get rid of Wu Yan. He can just kill Wu Yan right here and now. When the time comes, all he needs to do is to use the guards lying on the ground and the broken automaton as evidence to prove that Wu Yan broke in and started a massacre. Even if Bronson kills Wu Yan, no one will pursue the matter. Isn't that just digging his own grave? Let me show you the masterpiece of the Angel series, which is even more sophisticated than the cherubim. Bronson extended his hand. A powerful magical force flowed out of his hand and turned into a ray of light that shot into one of the buildings around him. Come to me, Lucifer. As soon as he finished speaking, the sound of something breaking through the air could be heard from the building that was filled with magical force. Immediately afterwards, a golden stream of light shot out and arrived in front of Bronson in an instant. With an unnatural gust of wind, it shot up into the sky like a meteor and collided head-on with the pitch-black weapons that were falling down like raindrops. Clang, 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 clang. The golden streams of light nimbly streaked across the air, striking the pitch-black weapons one after another like a whirlwind, sending them flying in all directions. Not long after, a series of crisp clanging sounds rang out. None of the nearly 100 pitch-black weapons landed on Bronson. They were all knocked away by the golden flowing light, either piercing into the ground or the surrounding buildings, scattering all over the place. Only then did the golden light appear in front of Bronson. It was a sword that was over 2 meters long. It was completely gold in color and had a mechanical face on the hilt. Apart from the color and some details, the sword was exactly the same as the sword that Cherubim transformed into. And the unnatural wind that flowed around the sword just now was actually a hot wind that contained an extremely high temperature. Hot gust manipulation. Needless to say, it was definitely the same type of machine as Cherub, the Angel series of automaton. With this excellent automaton, the one standing in front of Wu Yan would be the one who almost took the throne of the Demon King and became the champion of the Night Gathering. Your magical force seems to be a lot stronger than the pro-camouflage children. Bronson said coldly. A monster like you must be able to help me complete a lot of research, right? Chapter 1646. Whoosh. Accompanied by a sharp whistling sound, the golden greatsword shot out like a bolt of lightning. The blade surged with a super-hot wind, like a golden streamer with a fiery edge, flashing past. Bang 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 bang. Compared to the sharp whistling sound, it was much more chaotic. Gunshots, like machine guns, shook violently from the opposite side, instantly drowning out the sharp whistling sound. Amidst the chaotic gunshots, it wasn't bullets that shot toward the golden streamer, but a variety of pitch-black sabers, swords, spears, halberds, and all kinds of weapons covered in azure light. The medium that shot out these pitch-black weapons was not a bow, arrow, or cannon. Instead, it was a crimson space that stood in the middle of the space like a door. In the crimson space, ripples constantly reverberated. Every reverberation was accompanied by a pitch-black weapon emerging from it. Like an arrow leaving the bowstring, it shot wildly and rushed straight ahead. The atmosphere was shaking, and the wind was howling. Like an ever-victorious general charging into an army of thousands of men and horses, the golden streamer erupted with a super-hot wind. The blade, which was powerful enough to melt steel and cut everything in half, plunged into the group of pitch-black weapons that filled the entire field of vision in front of it. Screech. Suddenly, an incomparably ear-piercing screech turned into a sound wave within the group of pitch-black weapons, drilling into the ears of everyone present. That was the sound of the golden greatsword moving at an extremely fast speed. The pitch-black weapons that came close to it were all knocked away. Because there were too many pitch-black weapons, the golden greatsword was almost knocking away dozens of weapons in a second. As it flew forward, it also knocked away the pitch-black weapons that came crashing toward it head-on. Therefore, the overly fast collision sounds mixed together to form such a sharp, ear-piercing buzzing sound. However, that ended quickly. The golden greatsword was indeed very sharp. Under the enhancement of the ultra-high temperature of more than thousands of degrees, it could be said that it could cut through anything. But it couldn't cut through those seemingly ordinary pitch-black weapons. Not a single one. So, no matter how sharp the golden greatsword was, no matter how powerful the sudden attack was, the speed of the sudden attack became slower and slower under the continuous collision of pitch-black weapons. Clang. Finally, the sound of steel colliding with steel sounded. The golden greatsword still couldn't break through the storm-like weapons. When the sudden attack slowed down to a certain extent. Instead, it was bounced back by the pitch-black weapons. Seeing this scene, Bronson controlled the Angel series automaton, named Lucifer, to return the golden greatsword to his side. Looking ahead, his face was so gloomy that it seemed like water was about to drip from it. In front of him, the crimson space was still rippling, and pitch-black weapons were poking out one after another, as if they would never run out. Bronson's face was extremely unsightly. What exactly is that crimson space? What exactly was the pitch-black weapon that even Lucifer, who had been enhanced by several thousand degrees Celsius, could not cut through. It was impossible for Bronson to know that even if the wind was enhanced by tens of thousands of degrees, it might not be able to cut through those pitch-black weapons. After all, even if it was only hardness and sharpness, those pitch-black weapons were still noble phantasms. If Wu Yan's level wasn't restricted, his power would be severely limited. Otherwise, Lucifer's Angel series automaton would have been smashed into smithereens by the rain of noble phantoms, let alone knocking away so many noble phantoms. If Wu Yan's skills were not restricted, and he could not even use his superpowers, he could only use his telekinesis to squeeze the noble phantasms into the shape of weapons, which greatly reduced the power of the noble phantasms. Otherwise, Lucifer would have been broken. What's wrong? President Bronson. Standing in front of the crimson space, Wu Yan looked like a god in control of this space. His wine-red eyes matched the crimson space behind him. He looked at Bronson with a mocking smile. He extended his hand and grabbed a black spear. Didn't you want to kill me and dissect me for research? After that, Wu Yan lifted the pitch-black spear from his shoulder to his back and threw it with all his might. Whoosh! With the help of his telekinesis and strength, the pitch-black spear shot out as fast as lightning. Bronson only saw a flash of black light in front of him, and the pitch-black spear was less than 5 meters away from him. Goo! Bronson's face darkened and he raised 2 fingers. A magical mist rose from his body and entered the golden greatsword beside him. Suddenly, the golden greatsword spun, and in a strange sound, it disintegrated into a humanoid automaton. It was none other than Lucifer. His appearance was similar to Angel Ji's. He was also over 2 meters tall. He had 2 giant blades on his wrists and 3 pairs of wings of different sizes on his back. His entire body was golden in color. He was a humanoid robot with a strange appearance. He was an angel. Nimbly, it took a leap and arrived in front of Bronson. It raised the giant blade on the back of its wrist high above its head and slashed down viciously. Clang! The pitch-black spear that was about to reach Lucifer was knocked away. It spun like a dart and stabbed into the wall of a building not far away, shattering a large number of bricks. It didn't break. Bronson stared at the pitch-black spear that was stuck in the wall. His eyes were filled with doubt. What is it made of? Is it a magic equipment? Magic equipment was a tool that was equipped with magic circuits and could perform magic. Magic equipment did not have Eve's heart. Therefore, it did not have intelligence and life like an automaton. It was just a tool used to perform magic. Although it had magic circuits, it did not have intelligence and life. It could not control the magic circuits and perform magic like an automaton to reduce the burden on the user. Therefore, the user of the magic equipment had to control the magic circuits in the magic equipment to perform magic. Using musical instruments as an example, an automaton was a musical instrument that could magically play on its own. Meanwhile, magical equipment was just an ordinary musical instrument that required a player to play it. As such, it was rare for magic equipment to appear in a battle. After all, compared to magic equipment, an automaton only needed to be injected with magic to activate its magic circuits. It was undoubtedly more useful. Since Lucifer was still unable to break the ordinary-looking weapons with his magic, it meant that the weapons must have been specially crafted to carry some kind of magic circuit, right? Then, Bronson glanced at the crimson space behind Wu Yan. That crimson space, is it a magic equipment too? It doesn't matter if it's a magic equipment or a magic artifact, as long as it can kill you, it's a good tool. Wu Yan curled his lips into a smile when he heard Bronson's question. Besides, it can also be used like this. Wu Yan reached out his hand and snapped his fingers. Buzz! In an instant, crimson spatial ripples abruptly rose from the space around Bronson and Lucifer, covering them in all directions. Bronson felt a chill run down his spine. Without any hesitation, he jumped onto Lucifer's back. Lucifer leapt into the air with Bronson on his back. Almost at the same time, pitch-black weapons abruptly shot out from the crimson spatial ripples around Bronson, piercing through the air, and slicing through the space where Bronson was just a moment ago. If Bronson had not asked Lucifer to bring him away in time, he would have been sliced into pieces by now. However, Bronson did not feel happy. Instead, his eyes widened. Above Lucifer, a huge crimson spatial ripple started to fluctuate. Chapter 1647. It was as if the sky was dyed crimson. A huge crimson spatial ripple reverberated in the air above Lucifer, who was carrying Bronson. In an instant, the ripple expanded to a diameter of 10 meters and covered the entire sky above the orphanage. Your Lucifer transformed into a sword seems to be quite big. Bronson widened his eyes as he stared at the huge crimson spatial ripples in the sky. A voice that sent chills down his spine slowly entered his ears. Why don't you have a little competition with me? The crimson spatial ripple that covered the sky above the orphanage began to fluctuate violently. It was like a boiling pool that could not be stopped. Immediately, a huge, pitch-black sword that was more than 20 meters long, like a skyscraper, slowly emerged from the crimson spatial ripple. Bronson's expression changed abruptly as the sword fell from the sky like a mountain. Hum. The pitch-black greatsword covered Bronson's entire field of vision. All he could see was the incomparably sharp, pitch-black tip of the sword that was flashing with a deadly cold light. It violently cut through the air, and under the crazy vibrations of the atmosphere, it fell heavily towards Lucifer who was carrying Bronson. Ha! Feeling the huge pressure from above and the shadow of death that was gradually approaching, Bronson roared at the top of his lungs. He frantically urged the mana in his body as if he was trying to squeeze the blood out of his veins. He desperately squeezed out the mana that was strong enough to tear his body apart. There was no doubt about it. This was the first time in his life that Bronson had tried so hard. It was also the first time in his life that Bronson had urged such a huge amount of magic. The majestic magic exploded in the form of a hurricane and turned into steam that flowed into Lucifer's body. Lucifer's body was wrapped in a layer of visible magic film. He let go of Bronson and a ferocious hot wind surged out from his body and swept across the entire area. Ignoring his falling master, Lucifer raised his head and his body suddenly twisted and changed shape. He turned into a huge golden sword. Along with the super hot wind, which made the space creak as if it could not bear the burden, it shot into the sky. The huge black sword that covered the sky and the golden sword that was glowing with a fiery red-hot wind was like a needle against an awn, like a mountain crashing into a meteor, in the sky above the orphanage. They collided violently. Boom! With a deafening sound. A thunderous roar resounded. A burst of violent wind and waves exploded out, bringing with it an impact that made people feel as if they would be crushed into dregs. It enveloped the entire orphanage. Without the slightest suspense, the stone houses made of stone bricks were like glass as they were cleanly blown apart by the shockwave. The stone roofs were also mercilessly blown away, and even the surrounding fields were flattened out in small pieces. By the time the shockwaves dissipated and the violent rumbling disappeared, the scene had completely changed. The buildings became dilapidated, as if they were abandoned houses. They were so fragile that even a strong wind could blow them down. The ground cracked inch by inch like a spider web. A layer of the ground in the center of the field was shaved off, revealing a pit filled with smoke and dust. In the pit, Bronson knelt on the ground, his skin covered with scars. His face was filled with pain and he could not stop gasping for breath. Not long after, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Bronson's injuries were not caused by the attack, but by the excessive consumption of magic power. His body could not bear the burden, which caused his skin to crack and his internal organs to be damaged. Compared to Bronson, Lucifer's appearance was much more miserable. Standing in front of Bronson, Lucifer's originally golden body was now covered with scorch marks. Smoke was rising from his body, and there were even traces of electric sparks. Obviously, part of his body had been damaged. What was worse was that one of the 3 pairs of wings on Lucifer's back, which had golden feathers as hard as steel, was in tatters. One of the 2 giant blades on the back of his wrist was also broken in half. Obviously, even though Bronson had gone beyond his limit and supplied Lucifer with magic power, Lucifer was still no match for the pitch-black giant sword that was as big as a skyscraper. Of course, in order to achieve this, Wu Yan did not have it easy either. Standing in front of Bronson and Lucifer, his face was slightly pale and he was panting. Although he was in a much better state than Bronson, one could still see the faint tiredness in his eyes. However, it was not surprising that he would end up like this. Without superpowers, he could only use telekinesis to squeeze the iron sand into the shape of a weapon. The burden on him was not ordinary. After all, telekinesis was a highly condensed form of magic power. Using telekinesis would consume a lot of magic power. Yet, Wu Yan had challenged his limit and squeezed out such a giant sword. He even used telekinesis to control it and attack. How could he not be tired? In this world, there was no one other than Wu Yan who could use telekinesis to attack like this. You've lived a long life, President Bronson. Suppressing his slightly rapid breathing, Wu Yan coldly looked at Bronson, who was kneeling on the back of Lucifer's tattered body. There was blood at the corner of his mouth and his face was filled with pain. You're still alive? Should I say that you're worthy of being called the puppet user who almost became the Demon King? Bronson did not answer. It was unknown whether he was disdainful, unwilling, or unable to answer. He just raised his head and stared at Wu Yan. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. Oh, that's scary. Wu Yan laughed exaggeratedly as if he was frightened by the murderous intent in Bronson's eyes. It's a pity that 20 years have passed since you were eliminated from the Night Assembly. Other than your mana growing stronger with the passage of time, you haven't improved at all. You've even forgotten to train yourself in order to manage that mechanical workshop of yours. How foolish. Stupid. Bronson was so angry that he laughed. Individual progress is nothing but degeneration. The progress of the times is irreversible. Magicians are individuals, groups, and life forms that exist for the sake of progress. If mankind stagnates, it will bring destruction and disaster to the world. The development of science and technology is a means of survival that cannot be ignored. For the sake of progress, for the sake of development, it's worth it no matter how much you sacrifice. Bronson stood up with difficulty and sneered. For the sake of progress, for the sake of science and technology, individual sacrifice is nothing. No matter how strong one is, one cannot survive alone. If you don't want to be destroyed, the only way to survive is to strengthen the group. This is the true path of survival, the true progress. Wu Yan smiled. His smile was full of pity and sympathy. Indeed, the importance of individuals and the importance of groups are on the same level. Everyone knows which side is more important. Everyone knows which side is the wisest choice. Wu Yan's eyes shone with a sharp light. But being wise is one thing, being right is another. For the sake of progress and development, are you going to sacrifice those innocent people who have the right to live and whose freedom and lives were mercilessly taken away by you? No matter if it's Flay or Loki, although their importance can't be compared to all of mankind and naturally can't be compared to the development and progress of the entire world, sacrificing an individual for the sake of the group, no matter how beautiful you make it sound, is still an act of murder. You can't even protect the survival of an individual, you can't even improve yourself. You can't even grasp the things in front of you. Talk about development? Wu Yan didn't try to hide his emotions anymore as he taunted. How laughable and foolish. Bronson looked as though he was insulted. His face was filled with anger and haze. Of course, Wu Yan was indeed insulting him. There was no need to doubt it. Progress and development have nothing to do with me. I've only come here to fulfill my promise. At the same time, I've come to give you a big surprise. At the same time, I've also come to avenge Flay. I've also come to avenge her. Wu Yan extended his hand. From the crimson space behind him, a ray of light flew out and landed in his hand. It was a card. Didn't you say that no matter how strong an individual is, he is still an individual? Wu Yan raised the card in front of his heart and looked at Bronson. Then I'll let you see with your own eyes what kind of individual strength will destroy everything that you've spent 20 years building for the sake of the group. Chapter 1648. A card? Seeing his opponent, whom Bronson no longer dared to underestimate, take out an ordinary card and put away the crimson spatial ripples that had made Bronson's scalp tingle and made him worry about what kind of weapon would be shot out, Bronson's heart began to beat faster. Bronson silently endured the injuries on his body caused by the excessive amount of mana that he had just exerted. Then, he channeled a trace of mana to his eyes and covered them. Bronson's eyes glowed under the cover of the mana. He could see the card that Wu Yan held in front of his heart. It was a rectangular card that was less than 20 centimeters long and less than 10 centimeters wide. The color of the card was brown. A picture of a crazy warrior holding a great sword was engraved on the front of the card. Right below the design, there was a line of words written in golden font. Bronson frowned as he looked at the line of golden letters. Berserker? What is that? Although he thought so, Bronson did not dare to be careless. Even that space could shoot out any kind of weapon. The crimson space, which was as large as a skyscraper, had almost taken Bronson's life. At that moment, his adversary had put away that great weapon of mass destruction, and had taken out an ordinary card. What did this mean? It meant that either Wu Yan was crazy and wanted to make fun of Bronson so that he would not die so quickly. Or, it was something more terrifying than the crimson spatial ripples. Was Wu Yan really crazy? The answer was obvious. Impossible. So, it could only be something more terrifying than the crimson spatial ripples. Bronson realized this. Bronson could not wait any longer. No matter what you are going to do. Bronson clenched his teeth. Ignoring his body that was still wailing, he channeled his mana and let it seep through his blood. His body was covered with wounds. Blood gushed out of his body. It was sucked into Lucian's body. What do you think? Do you think I'll just sit here and watch? After replenishing his mana, Lucifer once again activated the magic circuit of hot wind manipulation. His charred and smoking body seemed to have turned into the eye of a typhoon. A fiery red tornado formed by super-hot winds swirled around his body. Crack. Then, Lucifer lowered his body. One of the steel-like feathers on his back was destroyed. The remaining 2 pairs of wings slowly spread out and the steel feathers shot out like bullets. They shot towards Wu Yan with sonic booms. Looking at the steel feathers coming at him like bullets, he took a deep breath and closed his eyes. Class card. Berserker, limited expansion. His incantation reverberated in the air. Mana flowed like water from a broken dam. It flowed through Wu Yan's hand and into the Berserker rank card. In the next moment, the magic power that surged into the Berserker class card turned into the most dazzling light that enveloped the entire rectangular card. Buzz! The mana roared through the space, setting off a gust of wind and dust. Together with the dazzling light, it covered Wu Yan's body. Whoosh 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 whoosh. On the other side, the steel feathers cut through the air like roaring bullets that swept towards the enemy. They crossed the space and shot into the magic light that brought up a gust of wind and dust. Clang! However, when the steel feathers shot into the magic light, a sharp sound of metal clashing resounded in the air above the dilapidated orphanage. Bronson could clearly see that as the sharp sounds of metal clashing resounded, the steel feathers that were supposed to pierce through the enemy with irresistible force were knocked away like garbage and fell to the ground one by one. Bronson endured the pain in his body due to the forced activation of his mana and stood up with difficulty. He cast his gaze towards the flash of mana and was immediately stunned. Bronson thought that Wu Yan was going to use some means to summon his automaton. But when he saw the situation in the magic light that dimmed, Bronson knew that he was wrong. In the dimming light, Wu Yan's figure once again entered Bronson's sight. He was still wearing the student uniform of the Valpurgis Wangli School of Mechanics and the pitch-black coat that resembled a knight's robe. His wine-red eyes glowed as he stared at Bronson, reminiscent of a lone wolf that had set its eyes on its prey. After such a huge commotion, Wu Yan didn't change at all. If there was a change, it would be that in Wu Yan's hand, there was something that no one could ignore. Wu Yan flipped his hand and held it horizontally above his head. It looked like an earth-colored rock block. One of the sides of the blade looked like a ferocious beast's fangs. It's so blunt that it's hard to believe. The handle of the blade was wrapped in bandages. It's a large axe sword. Looking at the axe, which seemed to be made of rock and looked more like a blunt weapon without a handle than a sword, Bronson felt goosebumps all over his body. Not for any other reason, but because Bronson could smell the scent of death from the shape of the axe. If the sword that Lucifer transformed into was like a divine sword used by gods to slay demons, then the axe in front of him was like a monster used by demons to slaughter and destroy lives. Smelling the scent of death from the sword, Bronson's mind, which had been stretched taut due to the unfavorable battle situation, snapped with a snap. Lucifer. Using the last of his strength, Bronson squeezed out all the remaining magic power in his body and violently channeled it into Lucifer's body. Kill him for me. Lucifer's eyes lit up like an angel's. He nimbly lowered his body and like a cannonball, he channeled all the heat into his remaining greatsword. Raising it above his head, he slashed at Wu Yan with the greatsword as he flew forward. This time, Wu Yan did not use Gate of Babylon to suppress Lucifer. Instead, he smirked, stomped his feet on the ground, and rushed towards Lucifer. This is the power of the person you look down on. Wu Yan raised his head and looked at Lucifer, who was rushing towards him. Witness the legend of heroes born from miracles. Raising the ferocious-looking axe above his head, Wu Yan leaped into the air and rushed into Lucifer's arms. Roar! Kill 100 of them. The overlapping runes of the liberation spell rubbed against the air and shook the air. At that moment, it was as if the world had turned dark. The only thing left in the world was Lucifer, who was about to slash his enemy with his giant sword. However, Lucifer's sword was destined not to be able to slash down. Because, in front of him, the enemy had disappeared. No. It should be said that the ferocious axe in the enemy's hand disappeared in front of Lucifer's eyes. It turned into a torrent like a whirlpool. It was like a beam of light, completely disappearing from sight. Yes. The axe that looked heavier than rocks and fake mountains moved at a speed faster than the speed of sound. It turned into a beam of light and was slashed by Wu Yan at Lucifer before it could even make a sound. Wang! By the time Lucifer noticed it, 8 beams of light had already slashed at him from the front, top, bottom, left, right, top left, bottom left, top right, and bottom right. A total of 8 directions, surpassing time in the truest sense, overlapped with each other and formed a vortex. Then, the 8 beams of light that formed a whirlpool shape seemed to burst out at the same time, mercilessly landing on Lucifer's body. Poochie. It was hard to imagine that although Lucifer was made of steel, there was a tearing sound coming from his body. Bang! Then, there was an explosion. 8 slashes viciously cut through Lucifer's body. His limbs, shoulders, and abdomen were all chopped into pieces. Then, the beam turned Lucifer's, and pierced into Lucifer's chest. Slash. This time, Bronson heard the tearing sound clearly. The beam of light tore Lucifer's chest apart, penetrated his heart, and came out from his back. It returned to its original form of an axe. The axe was huge, and when it pierced through Lucifer's body, it almost pierced through the rest of Lucifer's body. When Bronson came to his senses, Lucifer's body was still pierced through, hanging on the axe in Wu Yan's hand. The calm expression on Bronson's face froze. Bang! Lucifer's body, which was hanging on the axe, emitted electric sparks. Then, with a loud explosion, it exploded into pieces. The machine-like head was thrown into the air, and then fell heavily on the ground. It rolled a few times and came to Bronson's side. It was only then that Bronson realized what had happened. He really lost. He lost to a kid who was still studying in the academy, who didn't even go through the baptism of that night party, who didn't carry an automaton, who threatened him, and whom he planned to kill not long ago. Phew, Wu Yan waved the axe in his hand, which didn't match his body size. He turned around and looked at Bronson with a sneer on his face. He lifted his feet and walked towards Bronson. This is the strength of an individual that you look down on the most. Are you satisfied? Bronson looked at Wu Yan walking towards him. He couldn't help but take a step back. There was a trace of panic on his face. His eyes wandered left and right, as if he was trying to find an escape route. However, it didn't take long for Bronson to give up with a bitter smile. His opponent was an existence that could unleash 9 consecutive strikes at the same time as if they had turned into beams of light. No matter how fast Bronson was, could he be faster than the speed of sound? Could he be fast enough to turn into one of the 9 consecutive beams of light? There was no point in running away. This time, I have indeed lost. Bronson admitted his defeat. He pretended to be calm as he looked at Wu Yan. But, do you really intend to kill me? Wu Yan didn't speak. He continued to approach Bronson with the axe in his hand. Even if you expose my secret actions and present the evidence of me breaking the taboo to the Magician Association, it won't do you any good, right? Bronson stared at the approaching Wu Yan. A drop of cold sweat slid down his cheek. Sir, you just want to take back those GARM series automatons, so I won't detain them. If you want to avenge Flay, you've done a great job this time, so there's no need for you to continue, right? Wu Yan didn't say anything. His footsteps were so loud that they could pound Bronson's heart. He stared at Bronson as if he's his prey. Step by step, he approached Bronson. I did tamper with Flay's heart. Therefore, I am the only one who can restore Flay's heart to its original state. Sir. Bronson clenched his fist. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared at Wu Yan. If you wish, I can also restore Loki's heart to its original state. However, no matter how much Bronson said, Wu Yan's expression remained impassive. Only the sound of his footsteps and the gaze of a predator staring at its prey made Bronson's heartbeat accelerate to the limit. His blood started pumping faster and faster. Sir. As if he was forced to a dead end, Bronson spoke in a deep voice. Is there a need to be so ruthless? A mocking smile appeared on Wu Yan's face. It told Bronson whether he was going to be ruthless or not. This time, Bronson understood. This person won't let me go. If I don't think of a way, I will die. I will die. Bronson's heart skipped a beat. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a pistol. He aimed at Wu Yan and pulled the trigger without hesitation. Bang! Clang! A gunshot and a clashing sound echoed in the surroundings at the same time. The trajectory of the bullet shot out from the muzzle of Bronson's pistol seemed to have been seen through. A hatchet was swung downwards, deflecting the bullet that shot out explosively. Bronson's mouth opened slightly. This was the last movement he could make. Bang! The axe and sword swept over from the side, fiercely slapping Bronson's body. Poochie! A mouthful of blood spurted out of Bronson's mouth. Then, like a kite with a broken string, Bronson's body flew high into the air before landing heavily on the ground. Then, Wu Yan appeared in front of Bronson. He looked down at the bleeding Bronson and raised his hatchet. Enough. At this moment, a figure appeared beside Wu Yan and grabbed his hand that was holding the axe and sword. No matter how sinful he is, you can't escape punishment if you kill him like this. Kimberly looked at Wu Yan with her blue eyes. So, leave it to me. Seeing Kimberly appear, Wu Yan knew he couldn't kill Bronson. He could only put down his hand and pout. Then I'll leave it to you, Miss Kimberly of the Magician Association. Kimberly smiled bitterly. She was speechless. Chapter 1650. Valpurgis Royal Mechanical Engineering Academy. Medical Department. When Flay woke up from her sleep, she opened her eyes and took in the light outside. When she regained her vision, what appeared before her eyes was a ceiling that was extremely unfamiliar to her. Flay absent-mindedly looked at the unfamiliar ceiling. She used nearly a minute to think again. She tried to sort out her thoughts and judge her current situation. However, after nearly a minute of thinking, Flay could only mutter those words in a daze. Kidnapped? If you want to be muddle-headed, wait until you're discharged from the hospital. Right after Flay's voice left her mouth, an impolite reprimanding voice sounded from beside Flay. Flay was shocked and she quickly stood up. Soon after, a person wearing a white coat and a professor's uniform appeared in Flay's field of vision. She wore a pair of glasses and had a cold and elegant expression. Flay was stunned on the spot and she cried out in surprise. "Teacher Kimberly? Are you awake?" Kimberly did not show any concern for Flay's well-being. She also did not show any concern for Flay's body. At the very least, she did not show any concern on the surface. "Are you able to remember what happened before you fainted?" Flay tilted her head. Her face was filled with confusion. She furrowed her beautiful brows and began to think with all her might. This time around, Flay's mind was able to smoothly think. She did not go off track. Thus, Flay also remembered. Before she fainted, Wu Yan and Loki were fighting. Then, an abnormality suddenly appeared in her body. It caused her blood to flow in the opposite direction and turn into magic power. This caused Raby to go berserk. After recalling everything that happened before she fainted, Flay immediately panicked. "Raby. What happened to Raby?" "Calm down." Kimberly spoke with a terrifyingly calm voice. She moved aside. "Your dog is here." Only then did Flay see the place she was in. She was in a place that was similar to a hospital ward. At this moment, Flay was wearing a hospital gown. Bandages were wrapped around all over her body. She appeared to be in a very serious condition. However, Flay did not feel any pain at all. On a bed beside Frey's, Raby was also wrapped in bandages. He was lying there with his eyes closed. It was as if he had died. "Robbie." Flay immediately got off the bed. Kimberly didn't stop him. He allowed her to run to Ruby's side and put her hand on Ruby's body. After approaching Raby, Flay discovered that Raby was extremely weak. However, he was still breathing. His hand on Ruby's body could clearly feel the warmth of Ruby's body, proving that Robbie was still alive. "Don't worry about your dog, dog princess." When Kimberly saw how nervous Fry was about her automaton, she could not help but let out a sigh of relief. Although when you went berserk, your magic power did exceed its burden, causing its magic circuit to almost burst and its heart to rupture. Hearing those words, Flay's heart thumped heavily. Ruptured heart? Did he mean that Eve's heart was damaged? The automaton's heart is damaged? Wasn't that the same as being hopeless? You should rejoice. You have indeed encountered an existence capable of creating miracles. Kimberly did not keep Flay in suspense. Before Flay could respond, she sighed in astonishment. "I don't know what kind of magic circuit the automaton of Scarlet Taze has. That girl's magic was able to cure a wound that could be described as hopeless. I'm afraid that it would be difficult to find someone to cure it." Cured it? Flay was startled. Then, she became overjoyed. Then, "Robbie, your dog is fine," Kimberly declared. "Although I don't know what kind of magic Scarlet Taze's automaton performed, the automaton did heal your dog. Even the wounds on your body were healed by her." "Phew." Flay heaved a sigh of relief. She spoke gratefully. Thank you, the person you should be thanking is not me." Even though she was clearly thanked, Kimberly seemed to dislike it. Her tone that had just softened immediately became cold and detached again. "Also, it is still too early to thank me. There are many more things that you should thank me for." After saying those words, Kimberly turned her gaze toward the entrance. Flay also looked over. Following that, a scene that caused Flay to involuntarily cover her mouth appeared before her eyes. The door was slowly opened, revealing the scene outside. Loki was standing at the entrance with Cherub. He seemed to have heaved a sigh of relief as he sized up Flay with a cold gaze. Then, he walked in. Of course, the scene that caused Flay to involuntarily cover her mouth was not the matter of her younger brother coming to visit her. What caused Flay to be unable to restrain herself from covering her mouth was the fact that apart from bringing Cherub with him, Rocky also brought 4 dogs with him. The 4 breeds were shepherd dogs, German hounds, Great Danes and Dachshunds. Their limbs and shoulders were equipped with armor. They were dogs of different sizes. Seeing the 4 dogs, Flay's eyes became moist. She began to cry out as if she was choking with sobs. Riviera. Ruby. Lavina. Robin, these dogs were the family members that Flay wanted to save even in her dreams, the Hellhound series automaton. Woof woof. Aoo. Woo. Roar. The 4 Hellhound series automaton let out different cries of joy. With a jog, they ran to Flay's side and began to rub against her body. When Flay sensed the familiar scent emitting from the 4 Hellhound series automaton, she finally believed what she saw. She immediately hugged one of the automaton. Tears began to well up in her red eyes. She was only able to stop herself from crying with all her might. Due to the fact that the other dogs have not operated for a long time, their activation speed has become somewhat sluggish. Their bodies are also being examined. They should be able to return to your side soon, Rocky said indifferently. After saying those words, he turned around. I've brought your family members. After saying those words, Rocky immediately wanted to leave the ward. Seeing this, Flay immediately spoke out. Thank you, don't thank me. Before Flay could finish her words of gratitude, Loki's words stopped her. The one who saved them was Scarlet Eyes, not me. Also. Rocky turned his head around and glanced at Flay. The Divine Works has been disbanded. Hearing those words, Flay was stunned. That person who used to be our adoptive father, the person who tampered with our hearts, managed to find companions like us in his territory. Furthermore, after the operation failed, he planned to use the remains of our bodies to create puppets. Rocky's tone was slightly heavy and slightly relaxed. He spoke in an extremely contradictory manner. Thus, the Magician Association has already arrested him for violating a taboo. I believe that he will soon be sent to the execution ground and sentenced to death. Everything that restricted our freedom has already been destroyed. Rocky's red eyes looked directly at Flay, who was still stunned. His words contained an unprecedented trace of gentleness. Similarly, there is no longer any reason for you to fight. It's best that you don't participate in the night gathering. It's not worth it if you get injured, Rocky. When Flay heard Rocky's words of concern that he no longer concealed, she finally understood why Rocky would not hesitate to destroy Raby and force her to withdraw from the night gathering. It was not because Rocky looked down on the weak. Instead, it was because Rocky did not wish for Flay to be harmed. Her little brother did not truly hate her. On the contrary, he was very concerned about her. Flay's eyes became moist again. However, she did not allow her tears to fall. With a voice that even mosquitoes could not compare to, she softly spoke. Thank you, I already said that the person you should be thanking is not me. Rocky replied with his usual cold and indifferent tone. If your injuries are healed, then quickly leave the hospital. Those dogs of yours are still waiting for you to return to adopt and take care of them. After saying that, Rocky brought Cherub with him and left without looking back. Your automaton will be kept as your personal belongings. Kimberly smiled, which was rare for her. That's why you should thank that guy. Flay wiped the corners of her eyes and nodded heavily. Chapter 1651. Walpurgis King Mecha Academy, Tortoise House. Natsuki, Ikaros, Astria, Nagisa, and Kanon were occupying the corners, sofas, and beds in the room that was more luxurious than any other dorm room in the world. Natsuki, Ikaros, Astria, Nagisa, and Kanon were either standing, sitting, or lying on their stomach, reading the latest novel. Although this room was indeed decorated very luxuriously, the only thing that couldn't be changed was the size of the room. It was already very difficult to accommodate 5 people, not to mention that it occupied such a large space and there were many people. It was impossible to let the room fall into a state of silence. But now, the room was strangely quiet. Even Nagisa, who was usually the most talkative, kept her mouth shut, not saying a word. The group of 5 girls quietly occupied the corners of the room, the sofa, and the bed. Their gazes were all focused in front of them, which was the other bed in the room. Wu Yan crossed his legs and sat on the bed with his eyes closed. Mana swirled around his body and it reverberated around the room. Wu Yan is in the middle of cultivating his magic power. In the fight against Bronson, Wu Yan didn't rely on the power of the automaton, or the power of the girls. Even though Wu Yan had the upper hand, he did expend a lot of energy. Ignoring the fact that Wu Yan used telekinesis which consumes a lot of his mana during that fight, Wu Yan didn't do anything. He used telekinesis to control his noble phantasm to shoot. He also used telekinesis to squeeze the iron sand into the shape of a weapon. This kind of mana consumption was already very stressful for a normal vampire. Of course, Wu Yan is no ordinary vampire. He is the pinnacle of all vampires, a true ancestor with the noblest bloodline. In addition, his demonic power was at the peak of the true ancestor level. This kind of mana consumption wasn't a big deal. Therefore, the real mana consumption came later. The place where he used telekinesis to form the Great Sword and the limited expansion card. Originally, just by using it, telekinesis consumes a lot more MP than normal magic. Wu Yan also used telekinesis to form a sword that is at least 20 m long and as big as a skyscraper. The amount of mana consumed was enough to crush a pure-blooded vampire. As for the limited expansion class card, its magic consumption was even higher than the formation of the giant sword. One had to know that if one wanted to limit the expansion of a class level card, the user had to use the magic attire as a medium. Only then could they use the magic attire as a basis to materialize the heroic spirit's relic. However, Wu Yan didn't use his magic attire. Instead, he converted his mana into materialized mana and relied on his mana to support the limited release of the card. When Wu Yan used this method to create the limited expansion card, Rin Enbin and Livia thought he was crazy. After all, materializing mana required a certain amount of mana. Using mana to support the materialization of the noble phantasm would consume more mana than the human body could possibly have. If it wasn't Wu Yan who used this method to create the limited expansion card, even if it was an ordinary true ancestor, they would feel more or less tired. First, he used a lot of telekinesis. Then, he challenged the limit and used telekinesis to form the Great Sword. Finally, Wu Yan also used the limited expansion card of the Berserker. All 3 of these actions consumed a lot of magic power. With Wu Yan's extraordinary mana, he naturally wouldn't use up all of his mana. However, he still used up a lot of mana. Generally speaking, after using up a lot of mana, the effect of mana cultivation would be better than normal cultivation. Seizing this opportunity, Wu Yan was willing to spend some time to cultivate mana. No one would ever complain about having too much mana, right? Natsuki, Ikaros, Astria, Nagisa, Kanon, and the other girls are waiting for him. Wu Yan immersed himself in his cultivation. Judging by the increasing mana fluctuations coming from him, he must have gained a lot from his training. However, Nagisa and Astria couldn't help but feel bored when they saw the most important person in their heart immersed in cultivation. Oni-chan, when are you going to finish your cultivation? Nagisa rested her chin on her hand as she laid on her bed. She kicked her legs in annoyance as she complained. Nagisa has been in her room since last night. She didn't eat anything this morning. If only the dorm had a kitchen, Nagisa could make her own curry. I really want to eat curry. Gulp. Perhaps Nagisa's nagging stimulated Astria's appetite. Even though Astria didn't say anything, her stomach obediently expressed its thoughts on her behalf. Astria whimpered. I'm so hungry, Canon picked up the tea set and asked with uncertainty. Why don't you have a cup of tea first? Drinking tea will only make you hungrier. Also, don't use black tea to fill your stomach. Natsuki disagreed nonchalantly. She turned to Ikaros, who was standing closest to Wu Yen. Her eyes never left Wu Yen. Ikaros, you've been watching Yen since last night. Even if Angelus isn't tired, you should take a break. Why don't you come and have a cup of tea? Thank you. Ikaros shook her head, but she didn't agree. In less than a second, she went back to watching Wu Yen. He is indeed loyal, but isn't this loyalty a little too much? Natsuki bitterly smiled when she saw Ikaros' reaction. She turned to Wu Yen, who was in the middle of his cultivation. I really don't know how many lifetimes of blessings you've accumulated to have someone like this sacrifice for you. Natsuki didn't expect Wu Yen to hear her since he's in a state of cultivation. Wu Yen isn't sure if he heard Natsuki or not. The mana around him suddenly slowed down. Then, the mana returned to his body bit by bit. This is the sign of the end of his cultivation. Natsuki and Canon, who were sitting on the sofa, straightened their backs. Nagisa and Astria, who were lying on the bed, sat up. Ikaros took a step forward with anticipation in her indigo eyes. Not long after, the mana fluctuations that had been lingering in the room since last night receded. All of the mana around Wu Yen retreated back into his body. When everything calmed down, Wu Yen slowly opened his eyes under the watchful eyes of all the girls. His wine-red eyes flashed with a profound light. As if he just woke up, Wu Yen stretched his back. The sound of bones rubbing against each other could be heard from within his body. Coupled with that satisfied expression of his, needless to say, the results of this training session are pretty good. Master. Ikaros, who refused to touch the red tea, held a teacup in her hand. Tea, thank you, Ikaros. Ikaros. Wu Yen happily accepted the teacup and took a sip before passing it back to Ikaros. Thank you for your hard work. Oni-chan, master. Nagisa and Astria also jumped in front of Wu Yen with smiles on their faces. Is the cultivation over? Yes, it's over. Wu Yen rubbed Nagisa and Astria's heads. Sorry for making you wait, by the looks of it, you must have had a good harvest. Natsuki looked at Wu Yen for a bit before she stopped looking at him. She then casually said. Also, we aren't the only ones who waited, you aren't the only ones? Wu Yen tilted his head, a question mark floated in front of his head. Oni-chan. Canon walked to the window and waved at Wu Yen. She pointed outside. Someone has been waiting outside for a long time, but when you asked her to come in, she didn't want to. She's been waiting outside, since she's here, why don't she come in? Wu Yen scratched his cheeks and he got up from his bed. He walked over to the window and he looked at the courtyard. In the courtyard, in a corner of the flower bed, a young girl with a pearl-white ponytail on the right side of her head and 5 dogs of different sizes was hiding there. She was sneakily looking at the dormitory, as if she was peeping. Looking at the sneaky girl, Wu Yen helplessly chuckled. Chapter 1652. Flay stuck her head out from a flower bed that was large enough to hide a person. She was secretly looking at one of the windows of the male dormitory. She seemed to be waiting for something and did not want to be discovered. Of course, not wanting to be discovered was not a bad thing. Flay did not come to the male dormitory to do bad things. However, with Flay's hiding method, the probability of being discovered was almost 100%. Although the flower bed was large enough to hide a person, that was only possible if someone crouched down inside. However, Flay was lying on her stomach. Thus, her body was indeed hidden inside the flower bed. However, her feet and buttocks were exposed outside. Thus, who would not be able to tell that someone was hiding in the flower bed? Furthermore, Flay was also hiding in the flower bed by herself. However, the 5 dogs that Flay had brought with her were lazily playing in the surroundings. As if they were frolicking, they began to play in the surroundings. Thus, even if Flay had truly hidden her entire body in the flower bed, the people who saw this scene would definitely notice her. They would definitely feel speechless at this scene. At the very least, he thought that Flay would discover him when he walked out from the entrance. However, Flay had been looking at a certain window of the male dormitory the entire time. She did not even pay attention to the entrance. Thus, until now, he had not been discovered. Wu Yan, who approached Flay, felt speechless. If I were to ridicule her, I feel that I will lose if I do this. Xiao Chen rubbed his twitching eyes. Wu Yan walked to the flower bed where Flay was hiding. Flay did not notice Wu Yan's arrival even when she arrived before the flower bed. However, those Garm series automatons noticed Wu Yan's arrival. One by one, they stood up. Flay was slightly startled. She finally noticed that something was amiss. She turned her head around and looked to the side. She noticed Wu Yan. Seeing Flay looking at him in a daze, Wu Yan wanted to laugh. However, he was unable to laugh. He could only laugh dryly. Are you playing hide and seek? Flay first shook her head in a conditional manner. Immediately after, she realized what was going on. She panicked and her hand that was supporting herself on the ground slipped. It made the heavy body in front of him let out a bang sound. He landed heavily on the ground. Ugh, so painful, he cried out in pain. At the same time, he stretched out his hand and rubbed the pair of plump breasts that had the widest contact and suffered the most blows. Flay cried out with tears in her eyes. However, she did not know that the scene of her chest being rubbed was extremely stimulating to men. Gulp. Seeing Flay kneeling before him with tears in her eyes and rubbing her plump breasts, Wu Yan involuntarily gulped down a mouthful of saliva. Immediately after, he turned his head away. Senior Fu Lei, you're here to look for me, right? Wu. Flay blinked her eyes with a perplexed expression. She only reacted a few seconds later and hurriedly stood up. Leading the 5 dogs that had gathered around her, she faced Wu Yan with a gentle smile that had never appeared before on her face. Thank you for saving these children, my family, and me and Loki. As expected, you're here to thank me. Wu Yan spread his hands and smiled. I've said it before. The reason why I helped you is because Ikaros wanted me to help you. Thus, if you want to thank me, you can say it to Ikaros. Perhaps she will be very happy that way, then. Flay stood on her tiptoes and extended her head to look at the window of Wu Yan's room. Seeing her tottering appearance, Wu Yan was worried that she might fall down again. Where's Ikaros? She's in her room. Wu Yan smiled knowingly. What's wrong? Do you want to see Ikaros? Ugh. Flay hesitated for a moment and shook her head. Help me say thank you to her, no problem. Wu Yan straightforwardly agreed. Although Ikaros wasn't very familiar with Flay, the reason why she wanted to help Flay was because Flay's attitude toward her automaton touched Ikaros' heart. However, the two of them seemed to be getting along quite well. Ikaros wasn't good at interacting with others. It could even be said that she didn't interact with others at all. Flay was also clumsy and had a timid personality. It could be said that there wasn't a single person who interacted with Flay. On top of that, the two of them were naturally slow-witted. Having Ikaros become friends with Flay should be a pretty good choice, right? If possible, Wu Yan hoped that Ikaros would be able to make some friends. Flay wasn't a bad person either. From a certain perspective, matchmaking the two of them should be a pretty good thing. After making up his mind, Wu Yan was about to say something when Flay took out a bamboo basket. It was a bamboo basket filled with delicately made sandwiches that looked delicious. Thank you gift. With an expectant expression, Flay placed the bamboo basket in front of Wu Yan. Do you want to eat? Thank you gift? Wu Yan didn't suspect anything. He directly picked up a sandwich and swallowed it without caring about the taste. He planned to discuss Icaros with Flay. However, reality proved that being so anxious would only bring harm to himself. After swallowing the entire sandwich, before Wu Yan could even open his mouth to discuss Icaros with Flay, an extremely pungent taste rushed from his stomach to his brain. Wu Yan's mind went blank. Soon after, Wu Yan's facial expression changed at a speed that others would find difficult to match. Starting from the color of his skin, his face first turned green. Then, it turned black. Then, it turned red. Then, it transitioned to green. In the end, his entire face turned deathly pale. Resisting the pain and dizziness brought about by the pungent taste in his stomach and brain, Wu Yan staggered back 2 steps. He looked at Flay with disbelief. You put poison in the sandwich? Wu. With a panicked expression, Flay began to whimper. That's not poison, it's so disgusting, it's not poison. With a trembling finger, Wu Yan pointed at Flay. I was unable to tell what ingredient, cooking method or seasoning this taste came from. If it's not poison, then what is it? That. Flay hugged Raby's neck and spoke in an incomparably wronged manner. That's the medicine I obtained from the medical department when I was discharged from the hospital this morning, drugged? How is that not poisoning? Wu Yan was nearly driven mad. However, he discovered that something seemed to be wrong with his body. Starting from his stomach, a burst of heat began to run through his body. Like a stream of water, the heat flowed through his blood and flowed to all parts of his body. This caused Wu Yan's body to gradually heat up. Originally, Wu Yan was only treating this so-called medicine as a joke. After all, regardless of what sort of a medicine it was impossible for it to poison a true ancestor to death. However, now, Wu Yan was unable to ignore this so-called medicine. Evidently, this medicine was taking effect. Furthermore, it was a medicine that not even a true ancestor was immune to. Sensing that his body was becoming hotter and hotter, and his head was becoming more and more fuzzy, Wu Yan forced himself to maintain his final consciousness and glared at Flay. Exactly what sort of medicine did you put in there? Is it taking effect? Even though Flay was clearly being glared at, the timid Flay did not feel afraid for the first time. Instead, she stared at Wu Yan with an expectant gaze. In the next instant, Flay gave an answer that completely stunned Wu Yan. I also do not know what sort of medicine it is. Flay tilted her head. However, the professor from the medical department said that it could increase the reproductive ability of cows and horses. Increase the reproductive ability of cows and horses? Wu Yan cried out involuntarily. If a medicine that could increase the reproductive ability of cows and horses was eaten by a human, wouldn't it be equivalent to a powerful aphrodisiac? It was no wonder that not even a true ancestor was immune to this so-called medicine. That medicine was simply not something that could endanger one's life. No matter how strong a true ancestor's vitality was, they would not be able to do anything about this medicine. However, the medicine's effect was continuously increasing in Wu Yan's body. This was also a fact. If this were to continue, Wu Yan might really lose his reason and turn into a pervert. In fact, since earlier, Flay's body fragrance seemed to have been amplified by many times and entered Wu Yan's nose repeatedly. This caused Wu Yan's heart to burn with lust. Oh, my great ancestor! In a situation where he almost lost his rationality, Wu Yan cried out loudly to Flay. You've killed me! After he finished saying those words, Wu Yan hurriedly turned around and rushed out of the courtyard as if he was running away to prevent himself from pushing down this senior sister of his that he had only known for 2 or 3 days. During the entire process, Flay merely stared blankly at him. After a long time, she hung her head dispiritedly. Wu. I failed. Chapter 1653. Ha! 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 Wu Yan dashed out of the male dormitory's courtyard with the fastest speed he could muster with his ability restricted and his body comparable to that of a normal person. He ran madly all the way into the main street. In his hazy consciousness, Wu Yan only wanted to get away from Flay as much as possible. He did not even think about where he should run to. Therefore, when Wu Yan realized that he had run out of the dormitory and arrived at the main street, he immediately cursed in his heart. The reason was very simple. Although the number of people on the main street was not as many as the number of people during lunch break and after school, it was still quite a lot. Among these people who were strolling in twos and threes on the main street, chatting and laughing with each other as they walked in all directions, there were quite a number of young and tender female students. At this moment, in Wu Yan's eyes, none of these female students could be compared to the girls beside him, nor could they be compared to Charlot and Flay. However, their every action, every smile, and every frown were filled with seduction, causing Wu Yan's mouth to feel dry and his tongue to tremble. If he were to transform into a wolf on this main street that ran through all directions of the Walpurgis Wangli Tech Academy and find a random girl to pounce on and forcefully *ck her on the street, what would the consequences be? When he thought of this, Wu Yan's head that was so hot that it was almost burning cooled down a little. This allowed him to have some spare energy to think about other things. He would put aside the question of why Flay had drugged him for now. It was a fact that he had been drugged. He could not change it even if he wanted to. Moreover, judging from the fact that his entire body was burning up, his mind was in a mess, and he could not help but want to pounce on the girls that passed by. The effect of this drug was surprisingly good. However, that was not strange either. That was a drug that could increase the reproductive ability of cows and horses. How could it not be effective if it was eaten by a person? The most important thing he should do now was to stay away from the crowd and wait. Would the drug's effect weaken with time? If it really did not work? At that time, he could only disregard everything and rush back to the dormitory first. At least, in his own room. Natsuki, Ikaros, Astria, Nagisa, and Kanon were all pushovers. It was much better than finding a random person on the street to push. After making up his mind, Wu Yan took a deep breath. Just as he was about to dash out of the main street and run to the open space in the woods where he used to practice his magic tricks, a voice called out to him from behind. "What are you standing there for?" The moment he heard this voice, Wu Yan froze on the spot. This voice was quite familiar to him. However, because this voice was very familiar to Wu Yan didn't want to encounter it at this time. "Hey! He's asking you a question." Seeing Wu Yan frozen on the spot, the owner of the voice was very displeased. She walked past Wu Yan from behind and stopped in front of Wu Yan. Her long blonde hair shone brightly under the sunlight, her sapphire blue eyes were filled with resentment and dissatisfaction. She wore a beret on her head with a small dragon lying on top of it. She stood in front of Wu Yan with her hands on her hips and her pretty face scrunched up. She's very angry that she told others about it. When the passers-by saw this person, their eyes widened slightly. Then, they fled in all directions in a panic. It was as if they saw a ferocious beast. It was an exaggeration. Thanks to this, Wu Yan didn't have to worry about being pushed down by a random person on the street. However, from another perspective, the appearance of this girl with a small dragon was the worst thing that could happen. Xia. Xia. Feeling the fragrance coming from the girl in front of him that made his hot body itch for action, he sweated profusely and jumped a good distance away as if he was bounced off. Charlotte. Hey. What's with your reaction? Charlotte seemed to have suffered a huge blow when she saw Wu Yan jump away as if he had seen a ghost. Tears even appeared at the corners of her eyes. Isn't this too much? As the most notorious tyrant Rex in the Walpurgis Royal Tactical Academy, Charlotte was revered by everyone. It was also because of this that Charlotte didn't have a single friend in the academy. Now, she finally found a friend who could be considered on good terms with her. In the end, this person acted like everyone else and distanced himself from her. How could she not be affected? Thus, when he saw Charlotte's almost impossible tearful expression, Wu Yan endured the heat in his body while sweating profusely. He bitterly laughed out loud. "I'm sorry, I didn't do it on purpose. You should know that I'm not the kind of person who would distance himself from you for no reason." Charlotte coldly snorted and wiped the corners of her eyes. She accepted Wu Yan's explanation. Then, she finally noticed Wu Yan's abnormal state. "What's wrong?" Charlotte frowned when she saw Wu Yan's face covered in sweat. His face was red and he looked like he was in a lot of pain. She walked over with concern. "You're sweating so much and your face is so red. No matter how I look at it, it doesn't look normal. No. I'm fine." Wu Yan quickly retreated, but before he could, Charlotte was already in front of him and grabbed his hand. Wu Yan couldn't help but freeze up at the touch of her skin. He couldn't retreat any further. On the other hand, Charlotte was shocked when she grabbed Wu Yan's hand. "It's so hot." The moment she grabbed Wu Yan's hand, Charlotte's hands started to burn. That's the temperature of Wu Yan's body. When he thought about how he almost pushed Charlotte down, he couldn't help but sweat again. I'm not feeling well." Wu Yan squeezed out an answer with difficulty. "I'll go back first." Leaving behind the panting Charlotte and the confused Sigmund, Wu Yan ran back to his room without thinking. Bam! Natsuki, Ikaros, Astria, Nagisa, and Kanon, who were chatting in their room, jumped in fright when they heard the sound of the door being pushed open. They looked at the door and saw Wu Yan leaning against it, panting heavily. "Master." Ikaros and Astria stood up and called out to him. "Oni-chan." Nagisa and Kanon greeted Wu Yan with a smile. "You're back." Natsuki noticed that something was amiss and frowned. She asked in confusion. "What's wrong?" Wu Yan didn't say anything. He raised his head and exposed his sweaty face to the girls. What was also exposed was a pair of eyes that were emitting evil flames. In one of the rooms in the tortoise dormitory, screams, and all sorts of noises could be heard clearly in the corridor. However, it didn't take long for these sounds to turn into cries of pain, gasps for breath, and moans that made people think of. Today is destined to be a good day. Chapter 1654. The next morning. His back is aching and he's exhausted. Wu Yan slowly regained consciousness. Before opening his eyes, Wu Yan noticed that this awakening is a bit different from the previous ones. Of course, waking up in a state of backache and exhaustion was a different feeling from waking up in the past. Other than that, Wu Yan also felt something heavy on his body, just like his consciousness. It's as if he's being pressed down by something soft. Is this a ghost pressing down on me? But if it was a ghost pressing down on the bed, how could it be so comfortable? This feeling, this weight, it feels so familiar. Wu Yan woke up from his dream and opened his eyes. When he opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was Nagisa curled up like a kitten. She had tears at the corner of her eyes and she laid on top of him naked. Seeing this, Wu Yan's brain short-circuited and he's a bit confused. Nagisa is lying on top of me? But didn't Nagisa sleep with Natsuki? Why is she naked? It took some time for Wu Yan to react to the situation. His body moved unnaturally. But with this movement, Wu Yan's arms and thighs are starting to feel heavy as well. Beside Wu Yan, there was a voluptuous angel girl with a pair of pink wings and a pair of pure white wings. Similarly, the two angelic girls were also in a state of naked and smooth state. Ikaros and Astria are hugging Wu Yan's arms, one on the left and one on the right. She looked like she was sleeping soundly. And a little below the bed, Natsuki and Kanon were sleeping on Wu Yan's thighs. Their hair was messy and they didn't have any clothes on. Their skin was white and flawless. An unnatural redness covered their skin, including their cheeks. Natsuki, Ikaros, Astria, Nagisa, and Kanon surrounded Wu Yan's body. They were sleeping soundly. Looking at the scene in front of them, they couldn't help but feel their blood boil. Wu Yan couldn't react in time. However, the room is filled with an extremely foul stench. Wu Yan, who is familiar with this stench, turned his head and scanned the room. He saw that the room had become extremely messy. On the floor, on the sofa, on the counter, and on the potted plant, pieces of clothes were strewn all over the room. A strong odor permeated the air. It was a smell that could easily arouse one's urges. Wu Yan finally recalled what happened when he got hit by this strange smell. He remembered that Fu Lei had drugged him yesterday, and he had nearly turned into a self-propelled human cannon. His reputation had been completely destroyed. Also, if Wu Yan remembered correctly, he almost pushed down Charlotte, who was just passing by to buy soy sauce. Wu Yan felt a lingering fear when he thought about this. He was relieved. Fortunately, he made it back to the dorm. Otherwise, Wu Yan didn't dare to imagine what kind of tragedy would have befallen him. However, Flei's drugging incident did help Wu Yan. Otherwise, how could Wu Yan have the guts to push down Natsuki, Ikaros, Astria, Nagisa, and Kanon at the same time without the help of any Chinese medicine? Fortune and misfortune go hand in hand. With such thoughts in mind, Wu Yan reminisced about the feeling of making love with the 5 girls yesterday. He pulled his hands away from Ikaros and Astria. He hugged Nagisa and sat up. He started patting the girls' faces. "It's time to wake up, my dear wives." Under Wu Yan's teasing, the 5 girls started to let out soft moans that could make one's bones go numb. Their delicate bodies wriggled a few times and their brows furrowed slightly. They slowly woke up and opened their eyes. "Ha!" Nagisa yawned and stretched her body sleepily. However, when she moved, a sharp pain pierced her lower body. Nagisa cried out in pain. "It hurts." "Ugh." Kanon seemed to be in the same pain. She had a dazed expression on her face. Clearly, she hadn't fully woken up from her sleep. Natsuki, Ikaros, and Astria were the only ones who managed to snap out of it. This isn't the first time Ikaros and Astria did it. They didn't need to sleep yet. Even though they fell asleep due to Wu Yan's teasing, they will regain their consciousness as soon as they wake up. The moment the 2 angelic girls woke up, they remembered the crazy thing they did yesterday. Their faces turned red and even their ears turned red. As for Natsuki, she had simply gotten used to her ability to react quickly when something was wrong, allowing her to immediately wake up from her dizzy state. Natsuki naturally felt the same pain as Nagisa and Kanon. She recalled how a certain wolf had gone berserk yesterday and pushed everyone here to the ground. Her doll-like face darkened. Yua. Only then did Nagisa and Kanon recall what had happened yesterday. They cried out in shock and anger, grabbing the sheets on the bed and wrapping them around themselves. The next moment, Natsuki's sharp and cold gaze landed on Wu Yan, causing him to shiver. "Is there anything you want to explain?" Natsuki's voice was as childish and calm as ever. It gave off a contradictory feeling of calmness and innocence. However, there was no calmness or innocence in her voice. There was only bone-chilling coldness. It wasn't hard to imagine how angry Natsuki was at Wu Yan's actions yesterday. Pervert. Pervert. Idiot. Big idiot. Not only Natsuki, even Nagisa had tears in her eyes as she complained. "He didn't even give me time to prepare myself and treated Nagisa like that. Nagisa is really angry." That. Kanon, on the other hand, seemed to be trying to mediate the fight. With a red face, she pulled the blanket to cover her body as she squeezed out those words in a fluster. "Nagisa-chan, Minamiya-sensei, calm down." Whether or not Natsuki and Nagisa calmed down is another matter. However, the 2 of them stopped talking. They glared at Wu Yan as if they want to see through him. If it wasn't for the restriction bracelet, Natsuki would have attacked Nagisa for sure. Nagisa aside, Natsuki would definitely have attacked. Under the watchful eyes of the two girls, Wu Yan grinned sheepishly. After carefully choosing his words, he meekly said this. If I told you that a woman drugged me with an aphrodisiac, would you believe me? There was no need to answer that question. Natsuki, Nagisa, Kanon, Astria, and even Ikaros looked at Wu Yan suspiciously. That was only natural. A woman drugged a man? Could it be that this woman wanted this man to push her down? Although it wasn't impossible, this possibility was definitely much smaller than a man suddenly going berserk and forcing himself on a group of girls. They couldn't help but be suspicious. It's true. Someone really drugged me yesterday. Even if you don't believe me, you should at least understand me. Wu Yan didn't know what was the most sincere expression. He didn't know what was fake either. He tried his best to defend himself. Do I look like the kind of scum who would go berserk and force himself on all of you? Other than Ikaros and Kanon, Natsuki, Nagisa, and Astria checked Wu Yan out before they spoke in unison. What else? Wu Yan almost coughed up blood. At least believe me. As soon as he finished speaking, the entire place fell silent. Humph. After a while, Natsuki got impatient. She snorted and shifted her gaze away from Wu Yan. It looks like you're not lying. I'm not interested in the details, so I won't ask. But you have to know that there won't be a next time. Don't worry about it. Wu Yan patted his chest in glee. Next time, it will definitely be under the condition that you are willing to do it. Natsuki flinched and shouted angrily. Who would be willing to be with you? Chapter 1655. Walpurgis Wangli Academy, Student Cafeteria. With Natsuki, Ikaros, Astria, Nagisa, and Kanon in tow, Wu Yan entered the student cafeteria under the gazes of the surrounding students and the astonished gazes of the other girls. He didn't know if it was fate or ill-fated, but the moment he entered the cafeteria, Wu Yan saw a seductress with a small dragon perched on her shoulder. Yo! Without thinking, Wu Yan raised his hand and greeted him with a nonchalant expression. Here to eat? Charlotte's shoulders trembled exaggeratedly when she heard the voice. She turned her head abruptly and looked towards the entrance of the student cafeteria. When she saw Wu Yan standing there, a panicked expression appeared on her pretty face. Then, Charlotte didn't even say a word. She turned around and ran in another direction as if she was escaping. Ikaros. Wu Yan waved at Ikaros with a, I knew you would do this look. Catch her. Ikaros's eyes quickly turned pink with an illusory square frame. She stretched out her hand towards Charlotte. Bzzz. In the next instant, a spherical protective barrier made of crystals appeared around the fleeing Charlotte, trapping her within and suspending her in midair. Let me out. Let me out. Charlotte was stunned at first. Then, she knocked hard on the aegis that trapped her inside the absolute defense circle. She screamed as she knocked on the cafeteria. Save me. Someone save me. I'm going to be violated by a pervert. Who's a pervert? Wu Yan ridiculed as he led the girls to the aegis that trapped Charlotte. Besides, if it's just a pervert, he wouldn't dare attack you, right? You pervert. Let me out. Charlotte glared at Wu Yan. Her eyes were watery. Could it be? Are you planning to take me home and enjoy me? If it's really possible, I don't mind. Wu Yan moved a chair to the nearest table and sat down with the girls. He looked at Charlotte, who was knocking on the barrier in the aegis, absolute defense circle, in a mocking manner. But I'm hungry right now. I'll come back and enjoy you after dinner. You. Charlotte secretly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He said with a timid expression. You're not for real, are you? That depends on what you mean by that. Wu Yan rolled his eyes and he said in an annoyed tone. You're running away early in the morning and you're calling me a pervert? You're a pervert. Charlotte snorted. Don't tell me you've forgotten what you did to me yesterday. You're worse than a beast. As soon as Charlotte finished her words, the sound of a group of people falling to the ground and the sound of plates and cutlery shattering echoed in the student cafeteria. The students who are eating in the student cafeteria heard Charlotte's words clearly. An indescribable silence filled the cafeteria as they looked at Wu Yan and Charlotte in astonishment. After a moment of silence, many of them gave Wu Yan a thumbs up. To be able to subdue that Rex of Monarch's reign. Furthermore, he had done something that was worse than a beast. This was enough to establish a legend in the entire Walpurgis Royal Mechanic Academy. The students couldn't help but be speechless with admiration. Under those admiring gazes, Wu Yan couldn't keep his carefree expression any longer. He couldn't help but retort. Can you not say things that will cause misunderstandings? What did I do to you yesterday? I'm worse than a beast. You forgot? You forgot? How dare you forget? Charlotte shouted angrily. Didn't you try to take away the most important thing of a young girl from me yesterday? This time, the students in the cafeteria started coughing violently. Some of them even spat out the food in their mouths. Big brother. Even Nagisa seemed to believe Charlotte's words and revealed a sinister expression. Surely you didn't. Did you do the same thing to Miss Charlotte? What? Charlotte exclaimed in shock. Did he also almost steal your first kiss? First kiss? Natsuki, Nagisa, Kanon, and Astria were shocked. They said something that silenced the cafeteria. It was just a kiss. He looked like a duck that was being strangled. In an instant, the cafeteria fell silent. It was just a kiss. What does that mean? Crimson Eyes didn't just take advantage of Rex, he took advantage of Crimson Eyes and took advantage of Rex's robot. He even took advantage of her automaton, and this advantage wasn't as simple as just a kiss, right? This time, the gazes of the students in the cafeteria towards Wu Yan changed from admiration and reverence to disdain and contempt. Pervert. Pervert. You're an incorrigible pervert. The #1 pervert in the world. Charlotte shouted angrily. You even took advantage of your own automaton. Why don't a pervert like you just die? I really want to die now. Wu Yan forced a smile. He rubbed his forehead like he was having a headache. I beg of you. I don't care about the rumors, but please don't tarnish my reputation, okay? Natsuki, Nagisa, Astria, and Charlotte were angered by his words. Tarnish your reputation? That was something you actually did. How can this be tarnishing your reputation? It seems like even the bystanders were dissatisfied. They let out an inaudible sound. Stinky pervert, perverted bastard. I already said no. Wu Yan, who was about to retort, was startled. He turned around and looked to the side. In the next instant, his face twisted. Senior Flay. The one who is standing next to him and speaking is the one who caused Wu Yan to turn into a wolf and push down the 5 girls who came with him yesterday, Flay. Today, Flay only had Raby with her. The other automatons were nowhere to be seen. Flay was holding a bamboo basket that made Wu Yan's heart skip a beat. She walked over shyly and placed it in front of Wu Yan. Looking at the extravagant sandwiches in front of him, as if they could only be made in a high-class restaurant, Wu Yan's face twitched. This. What's going on? You. Flay sneaked a glance at Wu Yan. Her gaze kept drifting away. Thank you. You already used this joke yesterday. Wu Yan took a glance at the bamboo basket and turned his head away. That's why I don't need it. Please take it back. Being rejected by Wu Yan in such a cold manner, the pearl-colored girl with a ponytail was petrified. Her legs went soft and she knelt on the ground. She tightly hugged Raby beside her and started crying. I'm the one who wants to cry, okay? Wu Yan felt a headache coming on. I was screwed over by you yesterday. You must have put something in the sandwiches again today, right? You. Flay buried her head in Raby's fur. It was unknown if she was really crying or if she was faking it. Her shoulders were trembling. You don't believe me. You just screwed me over yesterday. How am I supposed to believe you? If this continued, there would be no end to it. At that moment, Wu Yan decided to change the topic. Oh, that's right. Why did you only bring Rabi with you today? This method of changing the topic worked. Flay raised her head and answered softly. I had everyone take turns to rest so that we can prepare for tonight's battle. Tonight's battle? Wu Yan and the group of girls were startled. Hey! Charlot, who was still trapped in the aegis, spoke in a helpless manner. Don't tell me you've forgotten that tonight is the opening ceremony of the night gathering? Charlot's reminder caused Wu Yan and the others to remember. In that case. Wu Yan spoke in an uncertain manner. The night gathering is going to start today. Furthermore, there will be a battle between the 99th ranked and the 100th ranked. Charlot cast a glance at Flay. In other words, Flay will be fighting against that Japanese tonight. In an instant, the group of people turned their gazes to Flay. Facing the crowd's gazes, Flay displayed a firm smile. Everyone could not help but feel relieved. Chapter 1656. Dang. 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 The clock tower of Walpurgis Royal Mechanic Academy rang its rhythm, bringing up a light and solemn chime that turned into echoes, echoing in the sky above the academy. Behind the central lecture hall of Walpurgis Royal Mechanic Academy, there was a stage on the lawn sandwiched between the medical department and the law department. Light trucks were arranged in all directions of the lawn. Wires were plugged into them, and they were ready to work at any time. At the front of the lawn was a temporary stage, and behind it was a passageway. On the left was a central lecture hall, and on the right was an ancient Roman-style auditorium. The auditorium surrounded the entire lawn. On the lawn, students in black robes gathered in groups of 2s and 3s, chatting and looking nervously at the direction of the stage, more or less making noises. The lawn was where the night assembly was held, and it was also the battleground for the contestants of the night assembly. Of course, the students who were able to gather in the battleground in black robes were naturally the gauntlet holders who had the qualification to participate in the night gathering. The students who couldn't participate in the night assembly went up to the auditorium, chatting with each other with noises that were noisier than the gauntlet holders in the battleground. There was still time until the night assembly. There were still around 15 minutes left. The gauntlet holders' official match would start at 6 p.m. when the bell rang. Right now, it was 5:15 in the afternoon. At 5:30 p.m., the opening ceremony would start, and until 6 p.m., it would be used for the opening speech. During this waiting time, putting aside the gauntlet holders in the field, the audience in the auditorium was using this time to enjoy the delicacies bought from the food salesmen or stalls nearby. They were in a noisy state as though they had entered a circus to watch a show. It wasn't anything strange. For the gauntlet bearers, the night assembly would naturally be able to compete for the throne of the Devil King. It was an important competition to win everything, but for the students who didn't have the qualification to participate in the night assembly was just a form of entertainment. Therefore, the audience could see it clearly. In the audience, lunchboxes, snacks, drinks, and even alcohol sales staff were working in an orderly manner at the stalls. All of them were extremely busy, running around the spectator stands. Wu Yan and Charlotte walked together with the group of girls. When they arrived at the audience seat, the black robe that they were wearing and the gloves on their hands exposed their identities as the gauntlet, causing many pairs of eyes to gather on them. Charlotte kicked the ground in annoyance and complained. Why don't you just enter the arena? Wouldn't that be very eye-catching? It's just as eye-catching when you enter the arena. Wu Yan gestured at the rowdy crowd with his lips. And look, these people are simply here to watch a monkey show. Are you willing to go on stage and be a monkey? Charlotte was at a loss for words. She quickly opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but a voice nearby covered her. Pancakes, freshly baked pancakes, anyone want some? The moment she heard the voice, Astria's pair of adornments on her ears moved. Her eyes glowed as she waved at the source of the voice. Me. I want some. Give it to me. Yes. A salesperson holding a box full of pancakes ran over with a smile. She was a lively and cute girl who looked slightly older than Charlotte. Astria-chan, didn't you just have lunch? Cannon tugged on Astria's shirt and said softly. You're right. It's not good for your health to overeat like this. Sigh. Astria let out a disappointed sigh. But, I really want to eat. You can't. Astria-chan. Nagisa reprimanded Astria like an older sister with her hands on her hips. Girls can't show off too much in public. Otherwise, it will damage their image. Seeing that the situation had developed into a situation where she did not know if she would buy it or not, a troubled expression appeared on the face of the pancake seller as she stood frozen on the spot. Wu Yan sighed and took out his wallet. She came all the way here just to say no. It's going to be awkward. I'm sorry, please give me a pancake, thank you. A smile reappeared on the girl's face. She wanted to thank him for his patronage, but when she saw Wu Yan, she paused for a bit before her eyes lit up. Your scarlet eyes, Wu Yan, Sama, right? Wu Yan nodded with a confused expression. Do you know me? It's my honor to meet you. The girl didn't answer. Instead, she grabbed the hand of the stunned Wu Yan who was holding the wallet and said in a joyful tone. Oh right. This pancake is for you. Treat it as a congratulatory gift for your victory in the night gathering. No. I'm sorry, please don't hold back. The girl stuffed a pancake into Wu Yan's hand. She looked at Wu Yan shyly and stuck her head out. She kissed Wu Yan on the cheek. Ah, you kissed me, the girl screamed and ran away like a wisp of smoke, leaving behind a stunned Wu Yan who was still holding the pancake in his hand, stunned on the spot. In the next moment, waves of bone-piercing cold air began to rise from the side. He really is a pervert. Charlotte said coldly. He's reminiscing. Nagisa puffed her cheeks and said angrily. Master. Idiot. Bad. Even Astria started scolding him. Her face was filled with indignation. Ikaros and Cannon didn't say anything, but their eyes were filled with anxiety. It was as if they were afraid their sweetheart would be snatched away by someone else. Natsuki didn't say anything. She just stared at Wu Yan with her emotionless eyes. She gave Wu Yan an indescribable sense of pressure. I didn't do anything, okay? Wu Yan cried out in grievance. How would I know what's up with that girl? Why did she suddenly kiss me? Humph. Charlotte turned her head away. She's probably a fan of yours, fan? You're one of the members of the 13, you should have your own fans. Charlotte glanced at Wu Yan. What's so strange about that? Fine. Wu Yan sighed and raised the pancake in his hand. So, are you eating or not? Of course I'm eating. Astria's indignation disappeared and was replaced by joy. She took the pancake from Wu Yan. You should have said no. Nagisa couldn't help but say. Astria-chan, you'll let Oniai-san off the hook if you do that. But the pancake is innocent. Astria said with a straight face. She took a big bite of the pancake and chewed happily. It's delicious. Everyone laughed bitterly when they saw the blissful expression on Nagisa's face. They couldn't bring themselves to complain. At this moment, on the lawn, the band around the stage began to blow their horns. The flock of birds was also deliberately released. They soared and danced in the air. Oh! The surrounding students clapped their hands and cheered. It was the prelude to the opening ceremony of the night party. This time, I have to go even if I don't want to. Charlotte calmly tightened her gown. All right, let's go. Wu Yan shrugged. He led Natsuki, Ikaros, Astria, Nagisa, and Cannon to the stage. Just as Wu Yan stepped on the grass field representing the night assembly, a person in formal attire broke away from the line of gauntlets and passed by Wu Yan as if he's skipping the opening ceremony. For a split second, when the person brushed past Wu Yan, he paused for a bit. Wu Yan's expression stiffened and he stopped as well. The guy left the scene in a hurry as if he just completed a mission. Wu Yan didn't even look back as he stood there with his hand raised. There was a piece of paper in his hand. Chapter 1657. In the first battle of the night gathering, the participants were the 99th and 100th ranked participants. In other words, Flay would be fighting against Lei Zhen, who she had been scheming to assassinate all this while, on the first night of the night gathering. Originally, Flay wanted to assassinate Lei Zhen because Lei Zhen's strength was not something she could handle. In order to save the Hellhound automaton, Flay had no choice but to assassinate Lei Zhen. In other words, with Flay's strength, it was impossible for her to defeat Lei Zhen. If she were to fight, Flay would undoubtedly be defeated. However, that was in the past. Currently, Rabi's Hellhound automaton was no longer the only one by Flay's side. Instead, there were more than 10 Hellhound automatons by her side. The automaton of the Garm series was originally developed to allow newbie puppeteers to control it as they wished. Therefore, it was not difficult for Flay to control the Garm series automaton multiple times. On top of that, the sound pressure control was an extremely outstanding magic circuit to begin with. Now, Flay's strength could be said to have increased by several folds. Of course, with Flay's current level of skill in magic, even if the Hellhound automaton was easier to control, she was still unable to control more than 10 of them. With Flay's current proficiency in magic, under the condition that she did not affect the control of the other automatons, she could at most control 5 automatons of the Garm series. However, this still allowed Flay's strength to increase by several times. Under such circumstances, the situation in the first battle between Flay and Lei Zhen could be said to have completely reversed. Watching Lei Zhen and Yaya being surrounded by more than 5 Hellhound automatons and dodging the sound pressure cannons with great difficulty, the two of them looked like they were in a difficult situation. They seemed to have fallen into a bitter battle. Charlotte could not help but forget to avert her gaze. This is too ridiculous, that's right, it's too outrageous. With Lei Zhen's strength, even if he couldn't enter the ranks of the 13, he would definitely be an excellent puppet user who would follow closely behind. Now, because Flay had obtained the help of the other automaton from the Garm series, she was able to obtain the help of the Garm series. His strength had improved greatly. The level of these two people had already surpassed the level of those ranked in the top 20 or 30. It was close to the top of the 13, meet NDS. Yet, in the first battle of the night gathering, this first battle had evolved to a level that the previous night gathering's first battles could never reach. Wasn't it ridiculous for the first match to be at this level? It could be heard from the frequent cheers and cheers from the audience. How exciting would tonight's first battle be? I'm afraid that the puppet users who are at the bottom of the night meeting are under a lot of pressure right now, right? This battle has already surpassed the standards of the previous night meetings. Charlot stared at the battlefield below without blinking. I wonder if there will be a victor between the two of them. It's hard to say. Sitting at the side, Natsuki shifted her gaze to Lei Zhen, who had a vexed expression on his face. However, a thoughtful glint could be seen in his eyes. Judging from that brat's appearance, he should be trying to think of a way to break this stalemate. If he can think of a way within an hour, that brat will be the victor. An hour? Charlot was slightly startled. Then, he understood. So that's how it is. The lower-ranked contestants had to stay on the battlefield for a full hour before they could request to leave. In other words, Lei Zhen had to either come up with a way to break through the encirclement of the Garm series automaton within an hour and defeat them one by one, or he had to hold on for an hour and go back to slowly think of a way. Lei Zhen was a person of action. However, his brain was not weak either. If he was given an entire day, Lei Jin should be able to think of a way. At that time, Flay would have no choice but to announce her defeat. Of course, on the second night of the night gathering, the 98th ranked contestants would also enter the battlefield and cause chaos. No one could predict how the situation would turn out. That's why the best course of action is to decide the victor tonight. If Flay wants to defeat Lei Jin, she has to defeat Lei Jin while she still has the strategic advantage. She has to defeat Lei Jin before he can think of a way to break through the stalemate. Therefore, this was a battle of speed. Lei Jin has to think of a way to break through the stalemate. Flay has to defeat Lei Jin before he can think of a way to break through the stalemate. Whoever manages to break through the stalemate first will be the victor. Suddenly, Charlotte realized that someone's voice was missing from her side. She scanned her surroundings. Her gaze landed on Natsuki and Nagisa and Kanon, who were chatting excitedly while watching the battle. Then, she finally noticed something. Wu Yan, Ikaros, and Astria are missing. Where are they? Charlot asked in a daze. Where did they go? Who knows? Who knows? Natsuki glanced at Charlot and replied casually. Maybe he's caught up in something troublesome again. At the same time, Wu Yan led Ikaros and Astria to the front of the central lecture hall as they sneaked past the venue of the night gathering. Wu Yan looked at the large building in front of him. He raised his hand and looked at the piece of paper in his hand. This piece of paper was stuffed into Wu Yan's hand by the guy who suddenly left during the opening ceremony. He passed by Wu Yan. There's only one sentence written on it. The Night Gathering Executive Department awaits your arrival. Without a doubt, this was an invitation letter. Even though it's just a piece of paper, the words Night Gathering Executive Department appeared on it. This simple invitation letter isn't as simple as it seems. The Night Gathering Executive Department is an organization set up specifically to deal with the night gathering. The Night Gathering Executive Department is in charge of everything related to the night gathering. The meeting hall of the Night Gathering Executive Department is located on the third floor of the central lecture hall. In other words, the headquarters of the Night Gathering Executive Department is located on the third floor of the central lecture hall. Wu Yan didn't know who invited him here. But if he guessed correctly, it should be a student. There are 3 people in the Night Gathering Executive Department who have the right to speak. They are the dean, the representative of the professors, and the representative of the students. Since the decisions of the Night Gathering Executive Department tend to favor the opinions of the adults, the head of the Night Gathering Executive Department is a student. The person who invited Wu Yan to the headquarters of the Night Gathering Executive Department is most likely the head of the Night Gathering Executive Department. Coincidentally, Wu Yan knows of this person's existence. Banquet at Hongmen. Wu Yan crushed the piece of paper in his hand. He looked at the central lecture hall in front of him and smirked. Let's see what kind of tricks you have up your sleeve. Wu Yan led the 2 angelic girls who looked like his bodyguards. He opened the door of the central lecture hall and he walked in. Wu Yan, Ikaros, and Astria saw a spacious hall when they opened the door to one of the rooms on the 3rd floor of the central lecture hall. The floor of the hall was covered with a crimson carpet. The wine-red curtains were drawn to the wall. A large Victorian-style round table was placed in the center of the hall. There were 3 seats around it. On one of the 3 seats, there was a young man who wasn't tall, had a slender figure, and looked like a young girl. His entire body exuded the aura of nobility. His legs were crossed elegantly, and he was holding a cup of black tea in his hand. He was sipping it in small sips as he sat there. Beside the young man stood a tall man wearing a deacon's suit and tinted glasses. Looking at the 2 at the round table, Wu Yan's eyes flashed with a sharp glint. Chapter 1658. In the vast executive hall of the night party, a young man with green hair and silver hair sat at the head of the round table, one standing and one sitting at the head of the table, releasing a presence that couldn't be ignored. The sound of the door being pushed open reverberated clearly in the vast space, but the young man acted as if he didn't hear anything. He continued to hold the teacup and drink sip by sip. Only the man who looked like a deacon turned his head and shot a sharp gaze in the direction of the door. Anyone who met the sharp gaze of the man who looked like a deacon would be able to tell that the other party wasn't simple. That's because there's a faint smell of blood coming from the man's body. Those with keen senses would be able to detect it. This was an existence that had truly killed people. Moreover, other than the smell of blood, there was also an extremely strong sense of oppression coming from the other party's body. This told others that this person not only knew how to kill people, but his methods of killing people were also definitely of the valiant kind. However, those with keen senses would be able to detect it. On this person's body, there was a hidden smell of blood and a sense of oppression that made people feel extremely out of place. That feeling of incompatibility was as if the other party was a wolf in sheep's clothing. Compared to the deacon who gave off a sense of incompatibility, the young man sitting at the head of the table who was elegantly enjoying his tea looked like a normal person. Of course, that's just how it looks. My Disty, my honored guest. As if he was satisfied, the noble and elegant young man put down the teacup in his hand and slowly stood up and turned around. He faced the door with a sly smile on his face. Really? Palace, welcome to my palace. Palace Hall? Did this person treat the meeting hall of the executive department as his own palace? I don't know if he's arrogant or confident. Pursing his lips, Wu Yan led Icaros and Astria into the meeting room of the executive department. Their footsteps were muffled on the luxurious carpet. The young man watched as Wu Yan and the two angelic girls got closer. The sly smile on his face got thicker and thicker to the point where it looked like he's up to no good. Looking at that smile, Wu Yan felt a bit nauseous, so he didn't go any closer. Instead, he stopped 5 meters away from the boy and met the eyes of the boy who is full of smiles. I'm not a person who likes to beat around the bush. His first sentence was a tit for tat. This caused the eyes of the man standing behind the young man, which were hidden under his tinted glasses, to quickly condense killing intent. He moved a few steps to the side so that there's no obstacle between him and Wu Yan. Clearly, this man had the intention of charging forward. Really, you can't be rude to my esteemed guest. The young man was clearly being treated with disrespect in the beginning, but he still sounded happy. He spread his hands and said as if he was putting on a show. However, I don't mind beating around the bush. At the very least, please give me the esteemed Scarlet Eyes. Do you have the time to introduce yourself? The head of the night meeting hall's executive department, number 10 of the 13, Cedric Granville. Cedric Granville. Wu Yan looked at the boy with a gaze that seemed to be able to see through everything before he opened his mouth with a smile that is not a smile. For now, I'll treat you as this person. Treat me as this person? The young man raised an eyebrow. The sly smile on his face turned into an enigmatic one. That's an interesting way to put it. It seems like you're not as simple as I thought. Well. The young man showed an exaggerated smile. He looked at Icaros and Astria behind Wu Yan. His eyes were filled with curiosity and amusement. You can carry 5 high-performance automatons with you, and you've even suppressed Marshall before. You defeated Felix and even sent Bronson, who almost took the throne of Demon King, to prison. Everyone knows that you're not simple. Everyone only knows about the first half of the fight. No one knows about the fact that I defeated Bronson, the head of the nightclub executive department. Wu Yan shrugged. Since you know this, doesn't that mean you're the same as me? Using your logic, let's assume that's the case for now. The young man smiled nonchalantly. His gaze never left Icaros and Astria as he spoke in a praising tone. You have a very beautiful automaton. And? Wu Yan glanced at the young man. You didn't ask me to come here just to see my automaton, did you? No, it's just a little. The young man waved his hand. His expression was as pure as an angel's, but his words sent chills down everyone's spine. After all, one of my few interests is to destroy beautiful things. That's a good interest. Wu Yan smiled knowingly. I'll see if I can kill you later. Pang! As soon as he finished speaking, the man standing next to the young man who looked like a deacon suddenly stomped on the ground and charged forward. Mana fluctuations flashed on the man's body. The man had clearly used some kind of magic to make his figure disappear in a flash. No. He didn't really disappear. The man's speed increased to a point where the naked eye couldn't catch him. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Wu Yan and grabbed Wu Yan's neck. During the whole process, Wu Yan didn't move a single muscle. His neck was easily grabbed by the attendant's hand. The man who looked like a deacon tightened his grip on the neck that looked like it would break with a single pinch. His eyes, which were hidden under his tinted glasses, were filled with murderous intent. Although you're the young master's VIP, can you please watch your mouth a little? Zhen said without a trace of a smile. The Granville family's deacons are excellent but not perfect. If you want to point out a flaw, it would be that you can't stand to hear your master being badmouthed. Wu Yan laughed when he heard that. He laughed as if he was watching a clown perform. His laughter was full of sarcasm and he wasn't worried that his neck would be crushed. This caused Shinobi's murderous gaze to turn cold. Just as Zhen was about to teach Kirin a lesson, the young man's unhurried voice entered his ears. Stop it, Zhen. As a deacon, it's my duty to stand up for my master. Zhen replied without turning his head as he tightened his grip on Wu Yan's neck. So, even if it's the young master's order, please let me delay it for a while. Well, I don't mind. The young man's reproachful words carried an imperceptible dissatisfaction as it reverberated in the air. But, rather than standing up for me, I hope you care more about my safety. Zhen paused for a moment before his expression changed. He turned around and looked at the young man. The young man was still standing at his original spot. However, at this moment, he raised his hands up high and made a gesture of surrendering. He had a smile on his face as he shrugged his shoulders. Behind the young man, a girl with a pair of pure white wings stood there. She held a laser sword in her hand and held it against the young man's neck. It was none other than Astria. Zhen was shocked. He turned around and looked behind Wu Yan. He saw that where the two angel-like girls were supposed to be standing, the one with long golden hair and pure white wings had disappeared at some point in time. All that was left was the girl with pink wings and pink hair, who was staring at the real girl with a pair of illusory square frames and a pair of cold, heart-piercing crimson eyes. Zhen's scalp tingled as he looked at the pair of cold crimson eyes. He had a feeling. If he really dared to crush the neck in his hand, then this beautiful girl who was as beautiful as an angel in front of him would definitely blast him into pieces before he could do so. Chapter 1659. One of them was choked by a hand while the other was held by a sword. Both of their necks were in a position where a fatal wound could be inflicted on them within a second. Tension filled the air. Oh, what a shocking speed. The young man with the laser sword on his neck said with a smile on his face. This is the first time I've seen an automaton that can move faster than a real one. Is there a magic circuit inside it that increases its speed? Or is it a magic circuit related to space? You think that speed is magic? Wu Yan smiled calmly. If that's the case, then I'm sorry, but can you not compare my Astria to your automaton? You can tell that it's really my automaton? The young man asked in surprise. There are plenty of people who can tell that it's an automaton, but I've never seen anyone who could tell that it's an automaton so quickly. After all, it's too similar to a real person, isn't it? It doesn't change the fact that it performed magic in an instant. Wu Yan explained with a lack of interest. The only thing that can perform magic in an instant is an automaton. This is common knowledge, the head of the night meeting. Beautiful. The young man clapped happily from the bottom of his heart. In other words, you didn't see that it was really an automaton, but that his speed was performed through magic, right? Isn't this even more difficult than seeing if it's really an automaton? Too bad, unfortunately. Wu Yan glanced at Shinichi, who had a sour expression, and he shook his head in disdain. This isn't the first time I've seen the magic your deacon used. Not the first time? Shinichi was stunned. Oh. The young man narrowed his eyes as if he was trying to see through Wu Yan. That's interesting. From what I know, the only automaton that can perform this magic is the one that can do it. At the current stage. Other than my people, no one else can do it. That's true. Wu Yan nodded in agreement. Only you people would treat a low-quality product like this as a treasure. Zhen's eyes suddenly released a murderous aura that was 10 times stronger than before. His heart was filled with anger. The smile on the young man's face finally disappeared. He stared at Wu Yan intently. Low-quality product? Your automaton magic trick. It should be the control of vectors, right? Wu Yan sighed. Controlling the vectors related to your body to increase your attack, defense, and speed, isn't it? You've seen through it to this extent? The young man was still smiling. However, the smile disappeared from his eyes. We call this magic trick complete control of vibration. It is a magic trick that interferes with the direction of movement of the body at the molecular level, thereby strengthening the attack, defense, and speed. This is the most advanced magic trick. I didn't expect that it would only be an inferior product in your eyes. It can only interfere with the movement of the body. What is it if it's not a low-quality product? Wu Yan didn't hide his words and mocked him without holding back. I've seen a magic that can even interfere with the movement of the Earth and slow down the Earth's rotation for 5 minutes. The effect is the same, but the level is completely different. Interfere with the movement of the Earth? For a moment, the young man's eyes seemed to widen in shock. Impossible. Masato, who is choking Wu Yan's neck, exclaimed. If there really is such a level of complete control vibration, the person who developed it would have used it to rule the world. Wu Yan didn't respond. Instead, he looked at the boy with an emotionless expression before looking at Shinobu. Both the master and servant felt a chill run down their spines. Could it be true? Of course, it was true. In the world of a magic catalog, the strongest esper in Academy City was vector control. It was the same type of complete control vibration, but the level of the two was completely different. True, complete control vibration could interfere with the movement of the body to increase its attack power. Accelerator's vector control could interfere with the movement of external energy. His every move could cause the Earth to shake. He could even slow down the Earth's rotation for 5 minutes. True, complete control vibration could interfere with the movement of the body to increase its defense. The vector manipulation that was commonly used could interfere with the direction of movement of external attacks, causing the incoming attacks to be reflected back. True, complete control vibration could interfere with the movement of the body to increase its speed. Accelerator's vector control could also interfere with kinetic energy, wind, and air resistance to increase its speed. With the support of vector control, Accelerator could use his skin to touch the body of others and reverse the flow of blood and bioelectricity, causing the body to self-destruct. With the support of the vector manipulation ability, Accelerator could reflect all physical attacks back. There was no need to increase his defense at all. In theory, even nuclear weapons would not be able to hurt him at all. With the support of vector control, Accelerator could control the flow of air and create a gale with a wind speed of 120 meters per second. He could also create 4 tornadoes behind him. With the power of the tornadoes, he could even match the speed of a fighter jet. Compared to vector manipulation, complete control of vibration was not qualified to be compared at all. Of course, that was referring to the level of vector manipulation. If the level of vector manipulation was only level 4, perhaps it would be on the same level as complete control of vibration. Of course, no matter how strong vector control was, it was still a superpower in the magic catalog. It had nothing to do with the nimble girl invulnerability world. It wouldn't appear in this world. Wu Yan didn't bother to explain this point. He glanced at Astria. Astrea understood and withdrew the laser sword from the boy's neck. She flapped her wings and flew into the air. She circled around the hall and returned to Wu Yan's side, landing next to Ikaros. The real's hand was still on Wu Yan's neck. If he really wanted to, he could have snapped Wu Yan's neck right now. Faced with such a situation, Wu Yan not only called Astrea back, he also ignored the pressure on his neck as if he didn't care about his own life and death. Seeing this, the Truth, who was in control of this person's life and death, gnashed his teeth in hatred. Really? The young man revealed a helpless expression for the first time. He already retreated. If you don't stop, wouldn't that make me look weak? The real's expression changed a few times. He unwillingly withdrew his hand and returned to the boy's side. In truth, the youth really wanted to ask if the complete control vibration that could shake the entire earth really existed, and if it did, who possessed it? However, perhaps it was because he subconsciously did not want to, or perhaps he did not dare to think that there was such a level of complete control vibration. The young man suppressed the doubts in his heart and forced a smile. Don't tell me you don't want to ask me why I asked you to come here? I told you from the start, I don't like to beat around the bush. Wu Yan chuckled at the boy. But you like to beat around the bush, that's why I accompanied you for so long. In other words, Wu Yan had already asked from the very beginning, it's just that the youngster kept spouting nonsense. It's not that Wu Yan didn't ask. It's because the boy liked to play and Wu Yan played with him. The boy choked, he was a little annoyed. In the past, other than facing his own parents, he had always been the one to take the lead in everything. But now, he's a level lower than Wu Yan. How could the boy not be annoyed? However, as if he had thought of something, the young man laughed happily again. I want to introduce you to someone. After saying that, the young man gently snapped his fingers. At the same time, the door to the hall opened. Chapter 1660. At the same time, everyone's eyes converged in the direction of the entrance of the hall. Thus, everyone present was able to clearly see it. Outside the door, a young girl pushed open the door and walked in slowly with her head lowered. It was a young girl wearing the uniform of the Walpurgis Royal Tactical Academy. The girl had long flaxen hair that reached her waist. She wore a beret on her head. Her figure was slender but not tall. She was well-proportioned but not voluptuous. If you only look at her figure, she was the type that wasn't hard to find. There was nothing special about her. Wu Yan, Ikaros, and Astrea flinched at the same time when they saw the girl in front of them. Their faces were filled with shock and astonishment. It was because the girl in front of them, whether it was her figure, appearance, or dress, they were all too similar to someone. Charlotte? That's right. The girl in front of them looked like she was carved from the same mold as Charlotte. If there was a difference, Charlotte's hair was a dazzling golden color while the girl in front of them had a rustic flaxen color. Charlotte's face was as beautiful as a fairy's. The girl in front of them wasn't weak either, but the weakness in her eyes and the depression on her face made her weaker than Charlotte. But without a doubt, the girl in front of them was very similar to Charlotte. If the girl in front of them was Charlotte's twin sister by the same mother, then no one would doubt it. No. It should be said that the girl in front of them is Charlotte's twin sister. Biological sister. Let me give you a proper introduction. As if someone was about to make a grand entrance, the young man introduced with a formal smile. Angelique? Birao. I heard that she's the younger sister of Tyrant Rex. Wu Yan had his suspicions, but when he heard the boy's straightforward introduction, he reacted. He looked at the girl named Aliette Kagura. He looked at Birao. So you're Charlotte's sister? Angelique stopped in her tracks. Not only that. She took 2 steps back and stood there timidly. Her timid gaze carefully shifted to Wu Yan. From this point alone, Angelique didn't resemble Charlotte at all. After all, no matter what, Charlotte was always full of confidence. Sometimes, she would even show her strong and violent side. It was impossible for her to show such a weak side. But no matter how weak she appeared, it was undeniable that this girl had the same aura. Wu Yan felt the same aura as Charlotte. It was the same aura as Charlotte, who came from a prestigious family and went through many hardships. At this point, Wu Yan can be considered to have confirmed the other party's identity. Because of this, his face darkened. No matter what, he was aware of the existence of the original storyline in this world. It seems like you're confident in suppressing me, Wu Yan said calmly. Aren't you afraid that I'll kill you here and take Angelique away? I'm not the only one in the Granville family. The young man replied calmly. You can kill me, but can you protect Angelique for the rest of her life? Can you protect her from anyone who wants to take her life? That's what you're counting on? Wu Yan narrowed his eyes. Let's hear what you want me to do, it's simple. The young man grinned. Kill the dean. Wah. Angelique sucked in a cold breath. She didn't know about the young man's plan. Wu Yan shot a sharp glance at the boy. There's an awe-inspiring aura in his eyes. The entire place fell silent. Phew. After a while, Wu Yan exhaled deeply and turned around. If that's the case, I'll play this game with you. With that, Wu Yan walked out the door without any hesitation. Ikaros and Astria quickly followed. Angelique looked at the young man with fear. After a moment of melancholy, she followed as well. Only the young man and the young man were left. They looked at the door until the commotion disappeared. Young master. The young man couldn't help but speak. Is this really okay? Why do you say that? The young man replied without turning his head around. Compared to Tyrant Rex, he's more suitable, isn't he? Young master, he's too dangerous. The young man gritted his teeth. He's not someone that young master can control at all, don't you get it, Zhen? The young man looked like he was on drugs. His eyes were filled with crazed desire. This is what makes it interesting. Chapter 1661. Clang, 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 clang. When Wu Yan brought Ikaros and Astria out of the central lecture hall, the bell from the clock tower started ringing. When the bell rang, it means the first battle of the night gathering has been going on for an hour. In other words, if the outcome of the first battle of the night gathering was still not decided by the time the bell rang, that is, if the battle between Flay and Lei Zhen was still not decided, then Lei Zhen, who was ranked 100th, would have completed his duty of waiting and could apply to leave the stage. With Lei Zhen's cautious personality, if he can't defeat Flay within an hour, he will probably leave the stage and come up with a plan to deal with Flay tomorrow night. However, tomorrow night, the 98th ranked person would also enter the arena, causing the battlefield to become chaotic, leading to the unpredictable development of the battle situation. Thus, it was very possible for Lei Zhen to continue fighting. He might even be able to kill Flay tonight. No matter what, the first battle of the night gathering had reached this stage, and it was about time for things to calm down a little. At least for those who were looking forward to the night party, the passion of the audience that was so lively on the first night should have faded by quite a bit. For the next period of time, Kiran, it won't be as rowdy as tonight. After all, the night gathering would last for 100 nights, which was more than 3 months. After such a long time, even if the gauntlet's heartstrings were tensed, it was impossible for the audience to maintain their enthusiasm for such a long time. It was only natural that they would calm down a little. But, what Wu Yan should be focusing on right now isn't the night meeting. Master. While walking towards the male dormitory, he said, Master. Astria said softly. Are you really going to assassinate that headmaster? Didn't I tell you? Wu Yan's expression didn't change at all. I'll play with that guy whose head is so rotten that it makes people want to vomit. Play? Astria tilted her head to the side. A question mark appeared in front of her head. What do you mean by that? Well. Wu Yan rubbed Astria's head and smiled. There's no need to worry about these boring things. Anyway, for us, it's nothing. After all, this is just a small interlude. Xianxia nodded as if she didn't fully understand what was going on. She didn't continue asking. No matter what. Just follow Wu Yan's instructions. That was Xianxia's course of action. Master. On the other side, Ikaros suddenly said and turned around. She glanced behind her. There, following Ikaros's gaze, Wu Yan turned around and looked behind him. He couldn't help but chuckle. Not far behind the three of them, a head wearing a beret peeked out from a corner. When he noticed Wu Yan and the others looking at him, he jumped in fright and ran away without hesitation. Wu Yan rolled his eyes and he waved his hand. Ikaros and Xianxia spread their wings and took to the sky to chase after the fleeing figure. Ah! Following a scream, Ikaros and Xianxia grabbed the man's collar and flew back. They landed in front of Wu Yan. Bang! He didn't know if it was because his legs gave out or because Ikaros and Xianxia suddenly let go of him. The man fell to the ground with a dull thud. He was in so much pain that tears almost fell from his eyes. I didn't think you'd follow me. Looking down at the person sitting on the ground rubbing her butt, Wu Yan crossed his arms. Angelette, didn't that annoying guy put you under house arrest? Men! Angelette exclaimed. She looked up and saw Wu Yan standing in front of her. Then, as if she saw a ghost, she shuffled her butt and retreated far away. Hey! Seeing how Mariette is trying to avoid him like the plague, Wu Yan had a rough idea of what's going on, but he still felt hurt. I'm here to save you, don't you think it's unreasonable for you to act like this? Angeliette's shoulders trembled as she pulled down her beret to cover her face. I'm sorry. Forget it. Wu Yan sighed helplessly as he looked at Mariette, who seemed to be bullied. I just want to ask, since you've followed me, why are you still running away? Ugh. Angelique grabbed her hat as she retreated backwards. She timidly glanced at Wu Yan and immediately cried out as though she had given up on herself. Simply unreasonable. Wu Yan, Ikaros, and Xianxia froze on the spot. It took them a while to recover from their shock. Huh? I have nothing to do with you. Angeliette cried out with tears in her eyes. Why did you save her? Wu Yan, Ikaros, and Xianxia looked at each other. Wu Yan scratched his face as he looked at Angeliette with uncertainty. You purposely followed me, and after you were discovered, you ran away like a rabbit. In the end, it was just to ask me this? What's with that expression? Angeliette shouted angrily at Wu Yan's speechless expression. Am I wrong? I'm not saying you're wrong. Wu Yan glanced at Angeliette. I'm just a little dumbfounded, huh? It was Angeliette's turn to be stunned. What do you mean? Looks like you still don't understand. Wu Yan looked straight at Angeliette. His soft yet powerful voice echoed in the air. You only need a reason to kill someone. What reason do you need to save someone? She couldn't help but look at Wu Yan. Looking at his nonchalant and perfunctory expression, she couldn't help but feel indignant again. That's a nice way to put it. You saved me for Onie-sama. Charlotte, huh? Wu Yan pondered for a moment before shaking his head. Maybe that's part of the reason, so it's for Onie-sama? Angeliette's grip on her hat tightened. Her expression turned gloomy. As expected of Onie-sama. She shines wherever she goes. Even with House Birau's decline, there are still people willing to do that kind of thing for Onie-sama. Angeliette's words were filled with admiration, jealousy, and inferiority. Wu Yan took a deep look at her. Do you hate Charlotte that much? Of course not. Angeliette said without hesitation. She lowered her head immediately. From the looks of it, Angeliette didn't hate her sister. Instead, she seemed to have some negative emotions towards her sister. For example, jealousy. For example, inferiority. For example, envy. If you think about it, it's understandable. Angeliette's talent was extraordinary. But compared to Charlotte, she was still lacking. And Juliet's personality was weak. Charlotte, on the other hand, was very competitive. She was destined to attract attention wherever she went. And judging from the fact that there wasn't a single ripple of mana coming from her body, she was either not a puppet user or a magician. Either that, or she was so weak that others wouldn't be able to sense her unless she used her mana. However, at such a young age, not only was she able to become one of the 13 people, when she was only in her second year, she even obtained an automaton like Sigmund, who was so outstanding that no one could help but be envious of her. Come to think of it, Aunt Juliet must have felt both proud and inferior towards her sister, right? In short. Wu Yan slowed down his tone. Since everything is fine now, let's go see Charlotte. She should be happy. I don't want to. And Juliet clenched her fists and closed her eyes. Please don't mind me. Just treat it as if nothing happened. After that, Aunt Juliet turned around again and ran away as if she was running away. Wu Yan rubbed his aching forehead. He waved his hand again. Icaros and Astrea leaped into the air and chased after Aunt Juliet. In the next moment, Mariette's shriek resounded through the air. Chapter 1662. Walpurgis King Mecha Academy, Tortoise House. In the room, Natsuki, Nagisa, and Kanon listened to Wu Yan's account of what happened during his trip to the night meeting hall. They fell silent. Assassinate the dean? However, the dean was not a person who had committed a heinous crime, nor did he have any grudges with them. Just because someone threatened him with his friend's sister's life, did he have to take the life of this innocent person who had committed no heinous crime and had no grudges with him? For Icaros and Astrea, it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't that Icaros and Astrea had a heart of stone, it was just that they didn't feel lost at all. Even if they had to be despised by everyone, as long as it was something Wu Yan wanted them to do, they would do it without hesitation. That was all. However, it was a different story for Natsuki, Nagisa, and Kanon. Natsuki was an attack demon commander. Although she wasn't all that kind-hearted, she was still an existence that punished evil. She wouldn't feel guilty about this kind of shady business, but she wouldn't approve of it either. Even someone as arrogant as Natsuki, who didn't care about anything, was like this, let alone Nagisa and Kanon. Nagisa and Kanon were the ones who were truly kind to the point of blinding. After all, with Nagisa and Kanon's personalities, they would love stray cats even if they met one. Bring it home and adopt it? Are we really going to assassinate the dean? Nagisa didn't try to hide her displeasure at all. Her cute face was gloomy. But Nagisa doesn't think it's a good idea. Oniai-chan. Kanon looked at Wu Yan pleadingly. She was in a difficult position. If we do that, we won't be able to stay in the academy anymore, right? For the time being, I don't think we have to continue hiding here. Wu Yan knew Nagisa and Kanon didn't like this idea, so he smiled bitterly. After all, we still have a mission to complete. It won't be long before we finish replicating Eve's heart. Before that happens, if we hide in the academy, we shouldn't be discovered. In other words, Natsuki frowned. Are you really going to assassinate the dean? Are you going to? Wu Yan mused for a bit before continuing. Actually, I don't think we can kill the dean. You don't think we can kill the dean? Many young girls were at a loss. Edward? Rutherford. Wu Yan looked at the girls. The dean. He's not a simple character. I heard it from Miss Charlotte. Misha raised her hand. She said, the dean is known as the strongest magician of the 19th century. The strongest magician of the 19th world? Natsuki turned to look at Nagisa. It seemed that it was rare for him to be a little interested. That is to say, Edward? Rutherford is the strongest existence? I don't know about it now. Nagisa said after recalling what Charlotte had told her. However, Charlot said that at least in the last century, the Dean was publicly acknowledged as the strongest existence. Even the demon kings of the past were no match for him. Is that old man really that strong? Astria was surprised, but she nodded as if she understood the situation. Indeed, the last time I saw that old grandpa at that awards ceremony, I kept feeling that there was an unusual aura on him. It's the ceremony for the gauntlet. Natsuki waved the lace fan in her hand as a look of dissatisfaction appeared in her gem-like eyes. At that time, I also felt that the Dean wasn't a simple character, but I didn't think much of it. What a failure. I can't blame you for that. Wu Yan shook his head. Our levels and strengths have been restricted. Our strength has definitely surpassed the academy head. Therefore, even though our levels and strengths have been sealed, we would still subconsciously ignore those who are weaker than us. This is understandable. That's right, Luo Ruoxin said. Then, Canon's beautiful eyes were filled with unease. Can we defeat the Dean if our level and strength are restricted? Win? Wu Yan subconsciously looked at Ikaros and Astria. Without a doubt, Ikaros and Astria are the strongest trump cards in the group. On the surface, Natsuki hid her personal guardian and only used her space manipulation magic in front of outsiders. Nagisa and Agrora hid their familiars and only used their byproduct freezing ability. Canon also hid her purification ability and only used her healing ability. Each of the girls had their own trump cards hidden. However, compared to Ikaros and Astria, their trump cards were lacking. Ikaros hid almost all of her strength and only used Aegis. She was only responsible for defense. On the other hand, Astria didn't hide her strength. She was the opposite of Ikaros. She hid her Aegis-type shield, which is superior to Aegis. Of course, this doesn't mean Ikaros and Astria are the strongest trump cards in the group. What makes Ikaros and Astria the strongest trump card in the group is their strongest ability, Pandora mode. As long as they activate Pandora system, Pandora evolution and enter Pandora mode, Ikaros and Astria will be the strongest in the group. With Pandora mode as their trump card, Wu Yan and Co might have what it takes to challenge the strongest magician of the 19th century, that's for sure. Even if it doesn't work out, Wu Yan still has 7 rank cards as his trump cards. Once he uses dreamy summoning and turns himself into a heroic spirit, Wu Yan will be able to unleash unparalleled power in this world. No matter how strong the Dean is, he can at least gang up on them. Thinking about it, Wu Yan shook his head and tossed away the thoughts of wanting to give it a try. Anyway, I don't think the Dean will be taken care of so easily. It's impossible that the head of the night party doesn't know about it, but he still asked us to kill the Dean. I see. Natsuki understood. Killing the Dean is just a bait. Does that person have another goal? Then, Nagisa and Canon's eyes lit up. We don't have to kill the Dean anymore? No, we still have to kill him. It doesn't matter if we can kill him or not, we have to at least make it look like we're doing it. Wu Yan poured a bucket of cold water on Nagisa and Canon. He rubbed Nagisa and Canon's heads and he continued in a gentle tone. All right. You don't have to do it, I'll do it. Master. Ikaros and Astria stood behind Wu Yan to show their support. Nagisa and Canon opened their mouths as if they wanted to say something, but in the end, they looked at each other and lowered their heads in grievance. Natsuki glanced at Wu Yan and her frown loosened. She nodded. You're right, at least we have to do it on the surface. If we can't kill him, the mastermind will have nothing to say. If we can, the Dean can only blame himself for being too weak. Wu Yan shrugged and didn't say anything else. Together with the girls, they looked at the bed in the room. Ugh. Ugh. On the bed, Angeliet's hands and feet were tied with strips of cloth. Her mouth was also tied with strips of cloth. She struggled there. Henriette. Coming to the bedside, he looked at Henriette who was struggling on the bed. Wu Yan smiled as if he was bidding her farewell. The restraints on your body aren't that tight, you can break them with a little struggle. Once you're free, go see your sister. She has been longing to see you for a long time. Ugh. Ugh. She struggled with all her might and kept shaking her head. Her meaning is clear, she wants Wu Yan to leave her alone. It wasn't easy for you to be reunited with your family, don't be so stubborn. Wu Yan sighed. Cherish the time you have with your family, it wasn't easy for you guys either. Don't let your thoughts get the better of you, okay? After that, Wu Yan turned around and walked towards the door. Natsuki, Ikaros, and Astria followed him without hesitation. Nagisa and Kanon hesitated for a moment, but they followed with determination. Henriette was the only one left struggling on the bed. You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.